6:55 p.m. on March 18th, 2021. I'd like to welcome to the school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask the people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hands, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address. After speaking, we request a participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, with that out of the way, we will start with the consent agenda, minutes from March 11th, 2021, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to approve the minutes and consent agenda from March 11th, 2021.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda or the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call all our votes on Zoom or roll call votes. I'll start with Matt.
Matt Hunt, yes.
Timolin.
Timolin Rossius, yes.
Brad.
Brad Austin, yes.
Justin.
Justin McCarthy, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, we are going to temporarily suspend our meeting agenda. This is our public budget hearing, but we're going to temporarily suspend that to go into a joint meeting for the Neshoba Valley Tech interview and appointment. So this is a joint appointment with the select board and the town moderator, and I will now defer to the town moderator, Tim Goddard, to take us through this process.
Excuse me one moment, Chair.
Yep.
We do not have Charlie Ellis. I just sent him an email link. If anybody has his, can text him. If anybody has his phone number, please have him check his email from me, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, this is Chuck. I'll text him.
All right, thank you, Chuck.
Thank
Go ahead, Tim.
Members of the school committee and members of the select board, and good evening. You will recall that Littleton has two representatives to the district school committee at the Neshoba Valley Technical High School, one full voting member, who is Mr. Ellis currently, and one alternate, I believe is Carl Melberg. Mr. Ellis's term has expired, and he needs to be reappointed to continue in that capacity. My understanding is that the school committee did circulate the position, the advertisement for the availability of the position, and that Mr. Ellis was the only individual who sent in a letter and expressed interest in continuing on the board. And I think we all agree Charlie has done a fantastic job on the Neshoba Tech board, and happy that he's willing to consider continuing. I think we're lucky to have him. The way that the district agreement works is that members are appointed by a nominating committee that consists of the town moderator and the members of the select board and the school committee. So that would be 2 5-member boards, and the moderator 11 members. So a quorum of 6 is required. We have that this evening, and I don't know Is there interest in waiting a few minutes to see if Mr. Ellis is going to get on the call, and would certainly give him the opportunity to say a few words if he'd like.
Mr. Moderator,
Good.
Yes,
Charlie he texted me, said he can't find the link.
I just sent him an email. If he could look for my email. Thank you.
All right. I would like to suggest, we have a very full agenda tonight, that let's go ahead and go through the nomination and the vote. And if Charlie gets in while we're doing that, terrific. If he does not, but he pops in, I will give him every opportunity to, we will, offer our thanks for him re-upping again. And if he has anything to say in respect to his role at Neshoba Valley Tech, we'll certainly give him the opportunity to have that in front of us.
okay, that sounds fine. With that, then, are there any nominations for the town of Littleton's voting member on the district school committee? This will be a 3-year term.
I would like to nominate Charlie Ellis for that 3-year term.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other nominations? All right, been moved and seconded to reappoint Charlie Ellis. Elizabeth wrote to the Neshoba Valley Technical High School District School Committee seat representing the town of Littleton. All those in favor? I guess we got a roll call vote here. Do you want to conduct that for the school committee?
Sure,
Mike?
I will do that. Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Timlin?
Timlin Rossi, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well.
Okay, for the select board?
Dorothy, can you tell if Cindy's on? I think she's presenting at the planning board, so
I
I'll
believe
take her.
she's presenting at the planning board.
So I'll jump in here.
Yes.
Roll call vote. Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Glavy?
Paul Glavy's a yes.
Mr. Nordhaus? I'll assume he's not on. And Chuck DeCosta's a yes.
Okay, and Mr. Goddard is a yes. So that would be a unanimous vote, 9 in favor, not opposed. So Mr. Ellis is reappointed to the district school committee. I'm looking at the superintendent now. Can your office transmit a letter to that effect to Superintendent Pigeon?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that concludes our business, Chairman Fontanella.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Thank you, members of the Board of Select Board, members of the Select Board. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're
Okay.
welcome to stay. I don't think we're
Yep.
going to let you stay up here with us. You have to go in with the rest of the riffraff.
Forget it, we're out.
Yep.
If they'll have you, you can stay there.
Bruins. We'll see you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All
Stay
right. And we will keep an eye out for Charlie. And if we get him, Charlie's done a great job for us. I can't even keep track. Do you remember, is this his 4th term, 5th term?
He's been here a long time, he said.
Yeah, I think it's at least 4, maybe 5, but I'd like to, we'll figure that out. It's a significant amount of time that he's devoted to this beyond the work he did on the Littleton School Committee prior to going to the Neshoba Valley Tech School Committee. So he's done a yeoman's job. No surprise to those of us who know Charlie well. But we just want to give him an opportunity to give him our appreciation with him actually listening. So if he comes in, we'll do that. In the meantime, though, let's reconvene the public hearing on the budget. We're going to do that first. Before we vote the budget, if there are any interested citizens that want to speak about the budget, we will do that. If there's other things you would like to speak about, we will reserve that and provide that opportunity at any point during the meeting after we get through the public budget hearing. So who is going to drive the bus for the public budget hearing? I
Steve
know it's
Mark.
not me.
Steve will be loading the slide presentation. I'll do the first 13 slides and then turn it over to Matt.
All right.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our FY 2022 budget presentation. We're going to start off, Steve, next slide, please. with our mission statement. Our mission is to foster a community of learners who strive for excellence and prepare each student to be a successful, contributing citizen in a global society. Our mission statement is key when we're developing a budget. Our budget needs to ensure that we can continue to actualize our mission. Next slide, please. Our district values are also very important: respect, responsibility, integrity, and accountability. We also utilize our strategic plan when we're developing a budget. It's imperative that we secure sufficient funds to actualize the goals and objectives that we set out in our strategic plan. Our strategic plan consists of 5 standards. The first standard, curriculum instruction and assessment. Second standard, professional development. Third standard, culture and climate. Fourth standard, community and communication. And our 5th standard is technology. We'd like to spend a few minutes, actually a little more than a few minutes, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, to take a look at some of our accomplishments in our schools. We've grouped our Shaker Lane and Russell Street School together and looked at their accomplishments as one document. Although we have 2 schools, we view elementary education as a K-5 continuum. So under curriculum, instruction, and assessment, we're very pleased that we're now fully implemented for our Foundations Phonics instruction in grades K through 2. We continue offering our STEM programming at Shaker Lane. It's called the Imagitorium. And this year we created STEM bags so that we could continue on with STEM activities throughout the year. This year we had visiting scientists from Alnylam Pharmaceuticals in grades 2, 3, and 5. We are currently taking a look at elementary writing pilot. It's Lucy Calkins. We hope to finalize the direction that we're going to go in next year by the end of June. We continue to develop and reflect on our common assessments and our core subject areas. Daily synchronous instruction, as we all know, we are in an unprecedented time, and we're offering a hybrid learning model and a remote learning model. Synchronous instruction is key to the academic success of our students. We also employ live streaming, which in my opinion and our administrative team's opinion has made a huge difference in continuing to offer effective instruction to our students. Yearly continuation of Potato Hill Poetry in grades 3 and 4. And we've altered our unified arts curriculum delivery this year. It's a little different, but it's been very successful, and we had to alter it so that we could meet the needs of both remote and our hybrid learners. As everybody knows, up to this point in time, our hybrid learners have also had remote days of instruction. Under professional development, I already mentioned live streaming. We took a look at Mike Flynn's model of dynamic hybrid learning and altered that to suit our own needs. Again, I can't overstate how important that was to keep our students connected and engaged throughout the year. In order to make sure that our teachers had the tools necessary to engage our students, we've offered a number of opportunities for professional development, not only in the applications that they're using, but in techniques and strategies for both remote and hybrid teaching. We've also spent a lot of time this year. It's one of our key foci for the year, cultural proficiency. And we brought in Dr. Khalees Warnham, and she offered a number of professional development days to our leadership team and our staff. Very well received. As a superintendent, I can tell you with certainty that I'm seeing the results of this professional development in our classrooms on a daily basis. We also brought in a fellow by the name of George Koros, and he wrote a book called Innovator's Mindset. We actually combined with Air Shirley Regional School District and Harvard School District and offered a PD day to all staff. George Koros is a graduate of a high school in Saskatchewan, Canada, and I don't want to be biased, but I'm really proud of what he's done. He's become an international speaker, and he was in a district probably about 35, 40 minutes away from the district I was a superintendent in back then. We continue with faculty-led PD on a variety of topics, multicultural book study, writing pilot review, seesaw, mindfulness and movement. And of course, we continue our initiative of social and emotional learning. Our teachers on a daily basis employ strategies that are interwoven into their teaching pedagogy to ensure that they're offering social and emotional learning opportunities to our students. We've also spent, this isn't our first year, our third or fourth year, focusing on trauma-informed instruction. We brought in Dr. Nicole Christian Brathwaite, and again, very, very successful and important PD for our administrative team and our staff. Next slide, please. Culture and climate. We continued, well, not continued, I guess from the spring last year we did with virtual trivia nights in line with our desire to commitment to celebrating cultural diversity. We utilized multicultural greetings during morning announcements. Fab Fridays in February for our staff at Shaker Lane. We continue with our Paw Print of Excellence of the Month Award. We introduced this award for staff. This is our third year, and I'm glad to see that it's still going strong. Family STEM Nights, speaking of that, we have begun this Monday. We began our month of STEM projects and activities through our district. Special thanks to Mrs. McGregor and Mrs. Lord. Our students in K-8 are involved in various STEM projects, and our high school students are mentoring our middle school and elementary students. We've offered and had to offer remote pickup stations in all of our schools, which has been very helpful in making sure that our remote learners have the materials that they need when they're live streaming into our classrooms during the day. The PTA activities, our PTA, we're so fortunate to have the PTAs that we do in our district. They continue to offer activities for families and students and bring in snacks for staff at perfect times when staff need a bit of a lift, so to speak. Community and communication, Shaker Lane School developed a home support guide that has been very useful this year to our families. Virtual community meetings, it's a way of keeping our community, our students especially, engaged as part of our school. As you know, having two streams of learning, remote and hybrid, makes it a bit challenging to make sure that our students feel that they're connected and part of our school. These virtual community meetings, more correctly, have been very helpful at accomplishing this. The administration at Shaker Lane decided this year that they were going to go into the movie making business and produce some great videos, the holiday vacation video and the remote snow day video. Anxious to see what their third video is going to be. Maybe we'll have one prior to the end of the year. We continue with our weekly principal updates. They become more electronic in nature and refer to a blog, so you can actually go in there and see everything in print that has been created throughout the year. We've hosted a number of parent forums that have been very valuable in not only touching base with our families to make sure that they have everything that they need to be supported, but also for us to have conversations with them and see what's working well and what we could perhaps reflect and do better on. Kindness Week, we're very proud of our district. All of our schools are kindness certified schools, and we're also a kindness certified district. Technology is our last standard. And as we all know, I mean, it's no surprise to any of us, We had to invest heavily in technology in K-5 to make sure that we were ready to offer a robust remote and hybrid learning program. We spent a lot of time, as I've already mentioned, providing professional development to our staff so that they were proficient in synchronous and asynchronous learning strategies. Our first graders for the first year used an augmented reality app called Quiver as part of their animals unit. It's kind of nice to introduce new apps at that young age. Virtual morning announcements on remote Wednesdays and remote weeks to help keep our students connected. Again, we all know that we invested in one-on-one Chromebooks K through 5. That was instrumental in allowing us to offer a robust learning program for all students. In order for our teachers to be able to connect to our students, using technology that it was as lifelike as possible, we invested in document cameras for our teachers. They worked out extremely well throughout the year. And we've also purchased a number of apps and tools to assist with the hybrid and remote learning process. Next slide, please. Accomplishments for our middle school curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We do this every year, but it is as important or more important this year with 2 learning models. We keep calibrating scope and sequence of the content to make sure that we have not only consistency between the 2 learning models, but ensure that our content is covered in a way that's engaging to our students. Music to my ears, we've increased the emphasis on project-based learning. Those of you that know me know how much I'm a fan of project-based learning and interdisciplinary projects within our classrooms and grades. Our educators continue this year to place an emphasis on taking a look at content for representation, equity, and cultural relevance with the goal of adjusting lessons to be consistently inclusive. The middle school also adjusted their daily schedule to create 80-minute blocks in the unified arts, which created opportunities for deeper lessons and richer content. Professional development, staff meetings have been dedicated to take inventory and develop culturally responsive lessons and units with a focus on representation through examples. This has been very successful. We also provided time for educators to enhance lessons through technology integration and expectations for teaching in the hybrid model. When I look at where we are at in September when we started this venture together and where we are today, I am so proud of what our staff has done to adapt to a new way of doing business. We've been very successful. We're very excited about finishing the rest of the year strong. And we're very confident that some of the things we've learned this year will become part of what we do in our classrooms moving forward. Culture and climate. We facilitated student focus groups to discuss social and emotional and academic needs with the goal of collecting data for improvement of student experience. Worked with the LMS PTA to host several appreciation events for staff. And the administration maintained weekly grade level team meetings to support staff and students. Next slide, please. Community and communication. Regular communication with families about remote material pickup, MAP testing, which is an adaptive test that we've been using in our district K-8 for a number of years, pooled testing and other school-wide activities. Increased opportunities for family engagement through the use of virtual conferences, virtual back to school night, grade level town hall meetings. You know, it's interesting, back in September, we were all learning how to use virtual technology, and now it's second nature to us, which is really nice to see how far we've come. Technology, continued development in updated features of Google Suite, such as breakout rooms. They have been instrumental in providing unique learning opportunities for our students. Kami, ClassKick, and other programs that allow students to demonstrate understanding. Coordination of technology to allow for the whole school MAP growth assessments. That's quite an undertaking to administer the adaptive exams using computer technology. We've been doing this for a few years, and it's going very well, and it gives us some great information. student-specific information that helps identify strengths and challenges so that our teachers can tailor curriculum to suit individual needs. As I've already mentioned, we're all using increased use of virtual meetings to connect with our families. Also adds a greater voice to our stakeholders, especially this year when we cannot see each other in person. Next slide, please. Our high school. First standard, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Again, this high school for the last couple of years has placed an increased focus on project-based learning and interdisciplinary opportunities for our students. Being remote and hybrid this year actually increased the focus on project-based learning. We've offered a seal of biliteracy for, I believe this is our 3rd year. We were certified by the state in order to do that. It gives our students who take senior courses in various languages the opportunity to demonstrate their proficiency and receive a recognition of a seal of biliteracy. We've continued with dual enrollment offerings, and we have a strong partnership with Middlesex Community College in environmental science, English, Latin, French, and statistics. We're excited about expanding our project with Middlesex College and also reaching out to other colleges. I can't stress enough how important it is to give our students an opportunity to experience college courses prior to being at college. The increase in success of students that take a college course, 1 or 2 courses prior to graduating, is instrumental compared to students that have not had that opportunity. I'm very pleased to say that we're still offering New England Math League to our students. And this year, for the first time, we're piloting the map growth assessments in reading for students in grades 9 to 11. I'm excited to see how the teachers feel about using this assessment to help tailor instruction to meet students' needs. We have been very successful and have placed a significant focus on developing cultural and inclusive lessons and elements to lessons in all of our classrooms. We've offered some new courses at the high school this year, including race and membership, global studies, pre-algebra, intro to videography, and industrial design. Because of the reality that we've had students at home and some students in person, we've placed a greater emphasis on offering virtual field trips as well. And again, even at the high school, there is a need for curbside pickup. In this case, we've offered curbside pickup for library books, which has been very helpful to our students as well. Professional development, again, cultural proficiency is a K-12 initiative, trauma-informed instruction as well. The high school reviewed their bell schedule, lengthened the number of periods, and decreased the number of courses on a daily basis. This was something that we heard loud and clear when we conducted focus groups with our students prior to the pandemic. I'm hoping that the high school continues to look at their schedule and find ways to decrease the academic stress for our students by decreasing the number of courses that are taken on a daily basis. That certainly does benefit our students and allows them to focus on fewer courses in greater depth. Our faculty-led, whoops, could you go back, please? Our faculty-led PD topics at the high school included assessment and grading review, and again, cultural proficiency. We've been working on assessment and grading for a few years, and the high school is making great progress, and that is inclusive of homework. Having discussions about the philosophical underpinnings of why we give homework is paramount. Making sure that when we have students that are working on activities at home, that they're meaningful activities and they really enhance the opportunity for students to learn and pursue opportunities for deeper learning. Next slide, please. Climate and culture, very proud of the fact that we are recognized as a Special Olympics Massachusetts Unified Champion School. We at school, high school again is a kindness certified school, so they took part in the Great Kindness Challenge again this year. And something that we're all proud of is Boston Magazine ranked Littleton High School as the second best high school in Massachusetts in September 2020. That is the highest ranking that the high school has ever received in the history of its existence. And we continue during the pandemic to offer certain clubs and activities. Community and communication. We continue to communicate with families on a weekly basis using principal administrative updates, and they are very active, more correctly, using Twitter. You know, sometimes people indicate to me that Twitter is something of the past. It seems to be pretty active still. Actually, for educators, it's a wonderful wealth of information in terms of finding educational journals and periodicals to keep abreast of best practices and next practices in education. Our civics, we have a civics project this year that's US 2, working with local community to promote equity in our town. You can tell that celebration of diversity and equity is a major focus in our district. We've actually created a new internship, which is really exciting, with the Littleton Water Department, where they will sponsor a couple of our students that go into any field that would be associated with anything that the water department would do. Our AP Physics students continue to have a broader depth of experiments that they can take part in as a result of their generous grants from LELWD. I have to say that we are so fortunate with the partnerships that we have in our community. LELWD has been supporting us for many, many years, and we're so grateful for their commitment to supporting education. Our PTA, our boosters clubs, Littleton Education Fund, and parent advisory councils, music boosters continue to remain active. It's really nice, as well as CPAC. These groups are key to representing various groups and making sure that we have the necessary support and resources to offer robust programs in a variety of areas. I'm very pleased to continue our partnership with LCTV. It's great to see that they have the ability to live stream. They live stream their graduation. They've been covering our basketball games and football games. Our Chairman Fontanella is very active. I was able to take one of the football games in last week and had an opportunity to listen to Chairman Fontanella give us a play-by-play recollection and dialogue about what's happening during the football games. Very talented, I must say, and certainly captivated my interest through the entire game. So thank you, Mike, for doing that.
That's my BU communications degree finally, I wouldn't say paying off, but getting used.
We're very grateful that you take your time to do that. Last one under this section is our partnership with our CASE Collaborative. This collaborative involves 11 regional and municipal school districts. It's been in existence for a number of years. What this collaborative does is it allows us to offer specialty programs for students that we otherwise couldn't offer because we wouldn't have the critical mass of students to do so. And because it's a collaborative, we're able to work together. We share space in schools, and as a result, reduce the costs of out-of-district students that are attending their programs. Very proud to be part of the CASE Collaborative. And technology, as you know, we've had a one-on-one program at the high school for a number of years. It's really nice to see how that program continues to evolve. And this year, our high school, because they had a one-on-one program, it was very easy for them to adapt to a remote and hybrid model. We also created a LPS education tech support website, and this website provides resources, including video tutorials for students, families, and staff. We upgraded our Google platform to Google Enterprise to provide enhanced features in the G Suite of applications. Well, it's not that long ago when I remember when we were converting to Google Classroom and going into the document section and creating documents was really quite challenging because it wasn't as robust as Word. But within not even a year, it was mirroring what Word could do. So again, Google has done an excellent job of providing programs and resources to schools that have allowed all schools to move ahead using technology in their classrooms. And again, some unique apps to the high school, Pear Deck, Google Slides, Google Forms, Google Classroom, which is not unique to the high school. And of course, we all use Google Meets, and Cami is being used by all of our schools as well. Next slide, please. Priorities for 2021 and 2022. First one that isn't even on there is that we are looking forward to starting the year, September of next year, in a pre-pandemic mode. In other words, full in-person instruction will hopefully be the only mode of instruction that's offered. As I've said before in the letters that we've sent home and on camera, there is truly a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of this pandemic. The news of decreased infection rates is welcomed at this point in time. And the fact that vaccinations are happening at an increased pace really gives us more than hope, a reality that we're going to get control of this pandemic. As always, we continue to do whatever we can to meet the learning needs of all students. We are reflective in our ongoing assessment of district programming to ensure that our students are attaining the skills that they need to be successful and college and career ready, which is paramount to the culminating portrait of a graduate, so to speak. We place a continued emphasis on student and staff wellness. This is important to know even this year, even though we have 2 learning models, we spend a lot of time making sure that we connect with our students and provide supports to them when needed. If we have remote students, it doesn't mean that they're not connected to us. We do everything we can to ensure that they are connected and provide supports when necessary. We continue to further develop instructional practices that integrate social and emotional skills, support inclusion, equity, and diversity, advance growth mindset strategies, which is key in order to move schools and learning forward, develop and enhance executive functioning skills, which are very important skill sets for not only our students, for all of us to continue to hone and master. We spent a lot of time reflecting and revising our sheltered English immersion offerings as well. We take pride in fostering a professional learning culture that promotes growth and innovation. Certainly it can be seen on a daily basis. And again, our partnership with 2 other districts in our surrounding communities for the last 4 years have opened up more opportunities to bring in quality speakers, world-renowned speakers, and also allow our staffs to connect in their specialty areas and work together on projects. And we, again, I don't even need to talk about our partnership. I've mentioned that a few times already. Years ago, we created a 6-year programmatic review cycle. That allows us to review all of our curriculum to make sure that our curriculum is meeting the learning needs of all students. And as important, gives our teachers the resources that they need to teach our courses at a level that ensures that our students will be well prepared when they leave our school district. Our facilities and maintenance repair plan, many years we've been investing money to make sure that our schools are maintained in a fashion that creates a conducive environment for learning. And we all know if you put money into buildings as you go along, it takes less money as if you left them to the bitter end where repairs would cost so much more. So I'm really proud of what the town has done. It's not just our school district investing in their buildings to make sure that they are maintained throughout the year. We already talked about Middlesex Community College. Very exciting that we're entering our 5th year to a tuition-free full-day kindergarten as of next September. Kindergarten will be tuition-free full day. And Next year, we are piloting the K-5 writing program. It is my hope that we will be ready to buy into a writing program and have a consistent program in K through 5. Having a consistent writing program is so important, and having opportunities for our students to write on a daily basis is also so important. This is why we spent this year looking at various programs and making sure that we're all on the same page, K to 5, as we move forward. Safety and security is something that never leaves our minds. We continue to take a look at our safety and security protocols to make sure that we can provide the safest environment possible for our students and staff. No surprise, we've had technology plans in our district for many, many years, and we continue to update them to make sure that we have a solid direction and strategy as we continue to move forward in that area. And we're still working on formalizing a K-12 digital citizenship program. We have formalized at K-5. We're hopefully going to, at the end of next year, be ready to formalize a 6 to 12 digital citizenship program. That is so important, and we're excited about moving forward with that initiative. And we've come a long way. It hasn't been that long ago where we were still writing MCAS exams with pen and pencil, so to speak. And we've fully converted to computer assessments. It made it a little easier for our district because we were already doing map testing using a computerized approach. And that brings me to the close of our accomplishments and priorities for this year. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Actually, before we do that, I would like to interrupt this budget hearing one more time. If we could take the presentation down for a moment. We do have Charlie Ellis with us. So if we could just get him with us for a couple of minutes. Charlie, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is you're late and you got the job. You didn't get here quick enough to bail out. The good news is for us, you got the job.
Thank you. I was able to hear some of the compliments. I really do appreciate that. It's been 11 years. I'm going on my fourth reappointment.
Okay.
I'm not going to take a lot of time because I know you're in your budget this evening. But the vocational school is doing well, and I will say thank you for your support. I'm really honored to represent the town. So thank you all, and next time I'll have a new monitor and we won't have that problem. So
I appreciate it, Charlie. We thank you. Your enthusiasm for the tech and the role you play with them is evident. Littleton benefits from it. We've benefited from it for the last 11 years, and we really appreciate the opportunity to benefit for it from at least another 3. So
Great.
Thank you very much.
thank you, Mike. Appreciate it very much.
All right, Charlie. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right, Matt, you're up.
All right, can I have the presentation again? Thank you. Okay, so the budget process timeline. So Justin and I began meeting with Dr. Clenchey and Steve Mark in October to identify initial budget priorities. By January, we had the initial joint board budget info summit where we presented our needs to FinCom and Select Board. By February, the preliminary budget was established. In March, we finalized the budget, and we are doing that now. And in May, it'll go before the town meeting for a vote. Next slide. Okay, so the projected increases for the fiscal year 2022 initial budget in order to maintain level staffing and services. So the big chunk that we see every year, and no surprise, is the salary increases to retain current staffing level. That includes lane shifts for teachers, step increases, and cost of living increases. Good news is that sped out of district, we're expecting 0 increase in that area. That can be a very costly number depending on the year. And we are seeing a $35,000 increase in the case transportation. So between the salary increases and the case transportation, we're seeing a total increases of $620,238. That is the lowest I've seen in the 5 years I've been on the school committee. This is, again, probably one of the most cut and dried budgets that I've seen. So that's a total of 2.8% increase from the fiscal year 2021 budget. Next slide. Okay, so here you can see that our total budget for the 2021 fiscal year was $969,762. Of that, almost $15.5 million is for the salaries, with another $6.5 million going towards expenses. One thing that we did do is we moved some of the contractual services from the expenses to the salaries, so that then that'll be part of the salary. So $105,000 was moved. I'm sorry, no, $140,000 was moved from contractual services and expenses to the salaries.
Matt, can you give an example of what those contractual services are?
Just cleaning, janitor, anything like that. The extra custodial duties that we have in place in addition to our own.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Custodian. Yeah. So that got moved into salaries, and so we have a difference of $725,238 from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. It's a 4.6% increase, but as you see, because we took that money from expenses, it's only a 1.2% increase in expenses, and that's the shift there of the 105,000, the 140 minus the 35,000 for the case transportation, which brings us to the 725 increase minus the 105 is the $620,238 increase we have, the 2.8%. Next slide. Okay, so description of different cost centers. Regular education, as you might expect, is all costs associated with regular education programming. Special education, all costs associated with special education, with the exception of the transportation costs. That's a different game. Number 3, student and staff support. That includes guidance, nursing, technology, curriculum, and professional development. Number 4, other instruction includes co-curricular and extracurricular cost centers. These are things that include things like sports and after-school programs or clubs. Next slide. Thanks. Number 5, system administration. This is the superintendent's office and staff, school committee costs. Number 6, school administration. This is the principals and office staff at each building. Number 7 is transportation and buses. This is regular and special education transportation costs. And lastly, number 8 is facilities and maintenance, operations, maintenance, utilities, custodial costs, contracted services. Okay, a lot of numbers here. So basically, our total budget for the fiscal year 2021 was $25,287,036. Almost 22 million of that, 21,969,762, was appropriated. 3.3 million came from revolving funds. So there's a breakdown there of each, what we're seeing, how much of each came from the revolving fund. By far the biggest went towards the special education and pupil services at $1,164,774. followed by regular education. You see nothing from system administration or school administration was taken from revolving funds. What we're seeing for 2022, and as part of the increase in our request for appropriated budget, is less money being spent from the revolving fund. So we're again asking for the 620,000. But let me just see. So you'll see for fiscal year 2022, the numbers are going to go down for regular education, student and staff support, other instruction, and just you'll see the small increase in the facilities management operations. So if you go to the next slide and break that down a little more. Okay, so again, these are the percentage changes from, so for the regular education, change in appropriated funds went down 132,500. That's 19% less from the revolving fund, for a total of $106,961 from the revolving fund, making up only 1.1% of it. Special education increased, it looks, by 29,718, by 2.1. Student and staff support went down 62,000. Other instruction went down 118,000, and no change in the revolving fund usage for system administration, school administration, or transportation. Facilities management operation had a slight increase of 5,000 for a 1.4% increase. So total of change is 1.2% of the revolving fund. So we went from using 620, I'm sorry, the 620,238 is 314,204 to the appropriate budget plus the 306,033 from the revolving fund. We're asking to add to that for a total of 620,238 to our request for the appropriated budget. All right, and so fiscal year 2021 approved school budget 21,969,762. We are asking for an increase in 620,238. Again, like I said, in my 5 years, that is by far the lowest request that I've seen. So for fiscal year 2022, we are hoping that the school budget for appropriated funds will be approved for $22,590,000. Next one. All right, so budget concerns going forward. We have to keep an eye on reduction in local aid and other revenue sources due to the economic impact of COVID-19. Town appropriation support for structural increases. As we look at what's going on with some of the buildings, what we need to look at to that into the future. Ongoing negotiations with the LEA on a new CBA. We had agreed on some short-term solutions for the LEA contract, but that's still ongoing. Ability to maintain school choice seats and associated revenue, and that's always been a big source of revenue for us, is the school choice. Should that change, we might see a drop in what we get there. New development and housing growth, potential impact on classroom space, transportation, and SPED. So again, if a student with high needs moves in to town that may need to be outside place, that could really affect the budget. So depending on those kind of things, we have to keep an eye on. Next slide. Okay. Oh, so yeah. So our move towards tuition-free full-day kindergarten phase-in. if you remember, is, when I know my kids were going through, if you wanted to send a student to full day free kindergarten, you were paying over $4,000 a year. I'm trying to get with a lot of the other towns in the area who are offering free full day kindergarten. We moved into a phased in approach to eliminate the tuition. And you see the drop each year that we've been able to do through first revolving funds and then getting more of it as part of the actual appropriated budget. The good news is that by fiscal year 2022, the 5-year phase-in would be complete and people would be paying $0 for their child to go to free full-day kindergarten. Next slide. Okay. So our revolving funds, this is greatly added to by our school choice each year. So for fiscal year 2021, we had $400,000 increase due to school choice. That is offset by $250,000 that we put towards salary increases each year. So we'll see a net of $150,000. So for our ending balance is going to be right under 2 million at 1,995,662, a very healthy school choice revolving. To add additional, just to give you an idea, what that remaining budget or ending balance might be. We have a little scale here shown from $0 to $250,000 additional salary offset. And unlikely, but if we had to go into the whole 250,000, we would still have a very healthy 1,745,662. I think we've done a really great job building up this fund for, especially over the past 5 years I've been here. So I give myself a lot of credit here, but it's no, they've done a really good job, because there was a time, before my time, I know that when Mike first came on this board, that there was not a lot there, and I give actually a lot of credit to Mike and my predecessors for building this fund up so that we have a lot of leeway. Next slide. Thank you. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Matt, Kelly, Justin, Steve, Mark, for doing all that work as the budget subcommittee. At this point, I would like to open it up to questions or comments from school committee members, with the understanding that we do have to formally vote on a budget tonight. And this is a timeline that has to be met relative to the town meeting date. So that needs to get done. I do see a couple hands up. We will get to those after we've had our own discussion. If we could just drop the presentation so I can see more of the meeting participants. Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you. All right, Justin.
Matt, nice job with all the numbers. Thanks for the presentation. I echo your words and want to thank our predecessors. In my opinion, the school's in very good shape, financially quite strong. The revolving fund, sort of the rainy day fund, is in wonderful position. And, God forbid if we need it this year or if we need it next year, we're in a great spot. So a lot of hard work went into the years building that up, and that needs to be recognized. And also just wanted to say that I'm really excited to see the tuition-free kindergarten finally at the end of the 5-year plan. Mike, you're smiling. It was kind of when I was first got involved as a parent, making a big push for that and community cause, and it's nice to see that finally go all the way through. So super proud of everybody involved and want to thank everybody publicly. Thank you.
All right. Brad or Timlin? Brad?
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
Yeah, Brad,
Sorry? Can you hear me? I
Yep, we
want
hear
to thank. Can you hear me, Mike? Okay, good.
Yes.
Thanks for y'all who worked on that. I know it's a lot of time to work on that subcommittee. I have a couple questions. I'm not as fluent with numbers as our banker friend over there. I just want to make sure I understand some things. The concern, some of the concerns make a lot of sense to me. The concern about the school choice seats and how that affects our budget, is that the concern? Is the concern that we will fill up all of our school seats with Littleton residents and therefore we won't have access to money from other towns? Is that the concern there? That it wouldn't be revenue producing?
Do you want to handle that, Kelly? You want me to?
Sure, I can handle that. Brad, that's exactly correct. Is if our Littleton resident town or Littleton resident enrollment increases, we only have so much space, and that would naturally result in us being able to accept fewer tuition students.
Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. I just want to make sure I understood the concern. The way I understand our role here, it's to kind of make sure that the budget makes sense and that's aligned with our priorities. And that's where I want to echo Justin saying I'm really glad we got to the zero tuition kindergarten. I think that's what the communities wanted, and I applaud the people before us who made those decisions. Would parents still have an option for doing a half day for that?
That's a great question, Brad. The answer is no, and the reason why it's no is if you offer opportunities for students to come less than a full day, you cannot offer a full day curriculum. In other words, you cannot introduce new material or new learning in the afternoon.
Gotcha. Thank you. The only other question I have is that we're projecting level staff and we budget for level staffing. We've all heard from a lot of community members and we've observed it ourselves that this has been a really trying year, especially for mental health. And I'm thinking that there may be reason for school administration to say, hey, we need another counselor. We need additional resources to kind of handle everybody coming back. If we do decide to add people after we're approving this budget, is that something we can do? Again, I apologize, this is a basic question, but is that something we can do moving forward?
I'd like to take a shot at that. So the answer is yes, right? If we as a school committee see a need that we feel compelled to address, and we have but you've got to remember is we can't go back to the town and ask for an increase in the appropriated budget after the budget cycle. We would have to find ways to fund that either through the use of school choice funds and or efficiencies that we discover as the year goes, right? If we thought we were going to pay X for something and it turns out that the electricity rates went down and we're paying less for that, that means we have that money available to meet this need. The other thing that I would caution in the years that we've done it is, you're right. This is a unique circumstance, and we might decide because it's so unique that that's exactly what we need to do. And if that's the case, we will do it. In a normal year, there would be questions raised about, well, why wasn't that need identified during the budget cycle when it's appropriate to identify that need and then balance that out with all the requests from the other town departments. And it's fair for us as a school committee to hold the other departments accountable in that same respect. But if we are going to, we don't expect them to hire extra police officers or extra highway staff outside the budget cycle unless there's a demonstrable unforeseen circumstance that just couldn't be predicted. We would expect, if we're expecting them to do that in respect the budget process, then we need to hold ourselves accountable to the same level of behavior. So that's how I would think about that. But having said that, both the school department and the town department have added staff outside the budget cycle, not frequently, not often, because that's not the ideal way to do it, but it has happened.
Thank you. I guess my one final question would be how, to what degree is this contingent on the possible restriction or maybe expansion of state and or federal aid? Is there a chance there may be more monies out there that we're not aware of that could maybe reduce our reliance on revolving funds, or is a chance the state may leave us holding part of a bill that we don't expect?
We are expecting a, excuse me, an ESSER 3 package coming from the federal government. We do not know how much money that is. We do know it's more than the ESSER 2 grant that we just received about a month ago, or at least preliminarily received it. We don't have the money yet. So that money is earmarked for certain things, but because it is linked to what we call a COVID package, it will be fairly flexible. I mean, Brad, we have added more clinical staff to our district through the years. This year, we rearranged or reorganized internally, and through a cost-neutral approach, added another adjustment counselor. So we've taken care of identified needs. Now I know next year is a new year, and we've gone through a pandemic for over a year. We're cognizant of that. It's also important to know that some of the specialty staff that you're probably thinking about in the back of your mind, there are not a lot around. I mean, mental health isn't just needed for public schools. It's needed in society in general. There's typically a shortage as it is. So I'm sure universities are retooling to offer new specialty areas that hopefully will address mental health needs in society in general.
And I'd just like to expand on that a little bit, because Brad, you raise a great point about that conceivably there is federal money coming. President Biden just signed that COVID relief package into law a week ago. So it just got signed. So, but the good news is that what we're being told, at least what I'm reading through the media, is that there's a significant amount of funding specifically for municipalities and school districts, which is different from the other packages, relief packages that went out. So it's going to be very interesting to see just how much that is overall, how much it is for the Littleton Public School District, but also Littleton as a town. I would expect that once the whole town, overall town government gets that information, that there should be some joint meetings between the FinCom, the board, select board, and the school committee, other departments, in order to work together to determine what's the best way to use that money overall, because it's entirely possible that the money that the school gets might be sufficient to address specific COVID needs like the ones you just cited or other things, but there might also be an opportunity to tap for the schools other money that the town has available and doesn't necessarily have a use for. I'm not going to speak for them. I'm not saying that that's a guarantee, but that process of working through that, then making sure that we're all set, we're making sure we understand what they're going to do. Sometimes the money would be spent on something that might be joint, right? A joint benefit to both the town and the school district. So this is an atypical budget year. It's going to continue to be an atypical budget year. The good news is that, I'll just segue into my own comments for a moment. I appreciate the work you guys did. I appreciate that the administration clearly understood that this was a year where hewing close to the bone on the minimal increase was entirely warranted and necessary, and they did that. The fact that we're not relying on school choice funds as we vote the budget is a divergence from the past several years, when we felt that it was necessary to specifically allocate spending out of school choice to support our operations. We felt we had the money available. It's clear based on the current projected balance in school choice that we were prudent. We weren't overspending it, and it was the right thing to do, and it had a significant benefit to the district. But the fact that we're not doing it this year, even though there is money available, I applaud you guys. I think that's the right thing to do. I think we need to retain as much flexibility as we can, because the impact of COVID on the economy and on tax receipts is probably going to be felt in the next fiscal year, because taxes, tax collections, and that type of thing kind of works in arrears. So I think we all need to be cognizant that, even though we took a minimum amount this year, we might still have to take a minimum amount again next year, because the news coming from the state, the money coming from the federal government will help, but it's one time. right? It's not going to keep coming. It comes, gets spent, it's not recurring. But our tax receipts in the local aid that we get, because if that goes down, could go down. So we need to be ready to adjust, and having a bigger balance in our reserve funds will in all likelihood be important to us in the coming fiscal year or years. So I think this is a good budget. I'm certainly supportive of it. I appreciate the work that was done. I think we are well positioned. I think that we're very fortunate in Littleton that we're not going to see a significant impact on staffing or services, and that we're able to meet the current level and even continue our steady growth in what we do and the benefit we get from it through this budget. So thank you for that. All right. Anybody else? All right, I do see a couple of hands up. So before we entertain a motion, I'd like to open it up for public input. I would respectfully ask that this be public input specific to the budget. If it's something related to how we may open for in-person learning, we will certainly have opportunities for that, but we'd like to get the budget taken care of and voted before we move on with that other business. But if you do have a comment or question on the budget, please feel free to ask it. Dorothy?
Okay. Cassandra, please state your name, your street, and your question, please. Cassandra, you're muted. Cassandra, you there? Nope. Yeah, Cassandra? No. Okay. Matthew Ridge, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Ridge, 325 Great Road. Got a quick question. I've been seeing I was reading the priorities, I guess you could say, for 2021, 2022. One of them was for equity and equality. What exactly does this mean?
Dr. Clenchey, you want to address that?
Well, it's somewhat multi-layered. I mean, in a simplistic sense, we want to ensure that every student is provided with the opportunities that they need to succeed. Equity and equality are very different things. We strive for equality. Equity are pretty basic things, for example, such as attendance at school, lunch services provided, things like that. But equity, we're really focusing on equity in cultural diversity as well as district.
In what way? I mean, I don't mean to be a nudge on this, but this seems to be, how is this being brought into the classrooms?
Through training and specific to cultural diversity, we've had a lot of training. Our teachers have been in-serviced and have had opportunities to work on developing those skills that they can directly use with students. Making sure everybody feels supported and welcome and celebration of cultural diversity. I mean, that's a focus that certainly should go beyond our school district and go into our community and beyond during the present time. So something the school systems work on always, but we identify various areas that we feel need greater attention.
Is there a way we can actually get a copy of that documentation or something to that extent? Because just so the parents can actually be involved with this a little bit more?
Sure, and I'm glad you asked that, because one of our next phases of implementation of celebration of diversity would be to engage parents in conversations in our communities. So I would, perhaps refer you to the specific school. I think that would be more valuable because those activities are school specific.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, I think we're all set at this. Yep, I will entertain a motion on the budget.
Motion to accept the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll go for a roll call vote. Brad,
Brad Austin, yes.
Timlin,
Simone Rascus, yes.
Justin,
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Matt,
Matt Hunt, yes.
and Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, thank you. All right, so we're through the public budget hearing. At this point, we will have other opportunities for input from interested citizens, but it is on our agenda. This is one of the two specific opportunities. Does anyone that has any questions for the school committee? Feel free to use the raise your hand function, and Dorothy Malone, our meeting moderator, will get you in front of us.
No questions.
All right, and then we will go on to the agenda, the public health metric update. We have Katrina Wilcox-Hagberg with us, per usual.
Hi, everyone. So I know you guys have a loaded agenda, so I'm going to try to just run through the big things real quick. So these are the state metrics, the four main ones that we've been tracking all along. And as you can see, the declines that we had a few weeks ago have really flattened out across the board. So not only cases, but test positivity actually ticked up a little bit. Hospitalizations have flattened out and deaths have flattened out as well. So those things are, we've flattened. When we look at Littleton this week, we had 22 cases reported over the last 2-week period, which was February 28th to March 13th. 2 weeks before that, we had 17. So this is actually a tick up in the numbers, but this is still in the yellow. So this is our 4th week in the yellow. When we look at the rates for all of those areas that around us that we've been tracking, Littleton's rate per 100,000 is 16.1. Which is, like I said, with the cases going up, that's slightly higher than it was 2 weeks ago. And it's actually slightly higher than last week as well. The other areas that are around us are really flat. They're very similar to where they were 2 weeks ago. And like we've kind of held here for a few weeks at this point. When you look at Littleton and each town individually, there are some that have ticked up and some that have stayed flat and some that have gone down a little bit. So it's starting to waver. It's not as flat. When all of the towns used to be much more similar to each other. So we're starting to see some movement across the area. So this is test positivity. Again, this is the total number of positive tests over the total number of tests conducted for each area. And this is not proportion of people, this is tests. Littleton had 1.8%, which was actually slightly higher than we were 2 weeks ago, and even last week. And then for all the other areas, we are pretty flat. So there's some indication like 495 or whatnot, it's a little higher, just a little bit. So we're holding. And when you look at individual towns within this, there's bumps up and some bumps down. So we're getting that movement again, things are changing. So focusing on schools, these are the DESE's numbers number of cases that are reported week over week. This week, there was 476 cases among in-person students and 193 among staff. And this is 2 weeks of increases. Again, that like flattening trend, and we're starting to see some movement again. We're seeing it in the schools as well. And although I didn't make a slide for this tonight to present, because of time, the number of K-12 clusters reported by the DPH also increased from 8 to 15. So there's a number of, it's almost a doubling of clusters as well. And then when we're looking locally, there's been a little flurry of activity with our health notification letters locally over the last 2 weeks. But the good news is that all of the 9 pooled testing dates to date have had 0 positive pools. So that is really encouraging as we're looking at opening the schools back up to more in-person learning days in the coming weeks. So I just want to quickly end on the stuff we kind of talked about, but some really public health notification things that I think are really important and are something we all have to focus on right now. So all the graphs that I just presented you showed that we're pretty flat. And when I look deeper into the data, there's some evidence of movement and locally an increase week over week. So we also have 3 variants now of concern circulating in mass. We have the UK one, the South African one, and the Brazil one. So these are more transmissible. The UK one's expected to be dominant, still expected to be the dominant variant in the next couple of weeks. And that one is definitely more transmissible. And the 5th study came out that said it also has more severe disease. So these are really concerning. So we are in a race right now to vaccinate as many people as possible and to prevent the spread. But we also need to use these other layers of cheese to keep the number of cases from spreading, from getting out of control. So while we wait our turn, keep using your cheese. To that effect, I think there's a couple things that we should really focus on, especially when we're talking about in-person learning, that could really help keep things from spreading locally. So the first is that mask. Like, make sure it fits snugly, make sure it's multiple layers, make sure you're covering your nose and your mouth. And this is, as we're looking at more in-person learning days for our students, this is a great time to look at your kid's mask and see if there's any way you can improve it. It protects your kid, it protects others, and you yourself, if you're going into the office or anything. This is a great thing just to check in on. There's so many more options than there were last fall. So the great news is that the state announced actually announced the dates that when we're all going to get vaccinated. So the supply from the federal government for vaccines have really are anticipated to increase. And it's not just our state announcing the same timelines. I've seen other states have similar timelines. So it's giving me confidence that the amount of vaccine we're going to get might actually support these trends. Hopefully, let's hope so. So the best thing you can do, one of the most critical things we can do, is to get vaccinated when it's our turn. Starting Monday, individuals 60 plus and those in certain work sectors can get vaccinated. And then April 5th, ages 55 plus and those with one medical condition are eligible to make appointments. And then April 19th, so on Patriots Day, the rest of us get to start trying to make our appointments. So we're a few weeks away from everyone to be able to make their appointment. And then it will still take time for the vaccines to roll out. So it's really important to recognize we're not done on April 19th. It's going to take a couple months to get through everyone. And that the April 19th date will also impact 16 plus. So if you have a high schooler, you can pre-register them as well. So I encourage everyone to get pre-registered at the Mass COVID website, which is COVID-19 vaccine. So this is a really important step. This is really what we need to do to really change how things look in the future. Well, while we wait to get vaccinated, I think it's really important that we have a couple holidays coming up that are gathering holidays. So we've got Easter, Passover, there's various other events in the next few months. And the good news is that unlike the winter holidays, some of us have actually family members who are vaccinated now. And that can kind of change how we gather. But it's still important that you make that plan and that you try to work in as many layers of cheese as possible. So those are the masks, the distance, improving the ventilation by opening the doors and windows or eating outside. The weather's getting better. Hopefully that actually can happen. Get tested before and after your gathering. Follow the travel order. Make sure you're adhering to gathering limits. And the CDC guideline for vaccinated individuals indicates that a vaccinated person can gather with one unvaccinated household. So if your kids are unvaccinated, that's an unvaccinated household. So don't go clustering multiple groups of unvaccinated households together, because that's where spread can happen. But if you choose to, make sure you're using all the cheese you can. And then it's also really important to practice safe gathering practices at your place of worship. I know these are holidays that are very religious, and so this is a great place to make sure that you're watching what you're doing in these groups. And importantly, stay home if you're sick or you've been exposed to COVID-19. So we don't encourage spread that way. So enjoy the holidays and seeing your fully vaccinated relatives, but do so safely, please, so we can prevent spread locally. And then one last thing that we could all really do to help the schools right now is this pooled testing program that's being conducted is really important, especially given the variants and the changes in openings and things like that, and even openings of our schools and increasing number of bodies in the buildings. So if you've registered your child for 5-day in-person learning, I highly encourage you to consent for your child to participate in the program. It's really the best tool we have to have data directly and in a timely manner on the population we are concerned about in this meeting tonight. So I really, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you're worried about your kid or need accommodations, I highly recommend you reach out to the nurses or to Lynn Snow. They've been fabulous answering my questions, and I've heard great things that they've done for other students. So if you have questions, please talk to them, and do so hopefully before your kid starts in-person learning more days a week. So how did I do for time?
Good, thank you. All right, any questions or comments on that?
Just thanks, Katrina, always helpful.
Yep.
Welcome.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Katrina. All right, next on the agenda is under the new business registration form. So overview of the results of the registration that we sent out to gauge interest in 5A. Dr. Clinchie?
Yeah, I can certainly start. First of all, I want to thank our staff and administrators for working tirelessly so that we are ready to recommend a date of full in-person learning this evening. When you think about the timeline that we've had, I received the protocols from the Department of Education last Tuesday afternoon on March 9th. And from that time on, we've done a tremendous amount of work, including having all the forms back to look to see what we needed to do to make sure we could meet every child's needs. I'd like to also commend our parents. I believe we had 100% return. I know our administrators were phoning families, if they had questions, etc. But we really appreciate your prompt response. It allowed us to be ready for this evening. Having said that, I'm going to turn it over to the principals to talk about a little bit about their process as well. But I'm very happy to report this evening to you that Shaker Lane, Russell Street, and Middle School is going to ask for school committee approval this evening to have their first full day of in-person. Please remember, we're still offering remote. That doesn't seem to be clear in some of the information that's coming out at the state level. The start date that we're recommending is March 29th, Monday, March 29th. I also have some other exciting news. Today we were able to finalize with the high school administration that they will be ready to come back full in person again with the remote option on Monday, April 12th. Having said that, we don't want to take too much time going through too much information. I can tell you that I feel good about what we've done in terms of organization of classrooms, some of the basic principles that we used. We wanted to, if possible, keep our students with the same teacher. The only exception was if we had remote students wanting to go into full in-person. We really wanted to make sure that the integrity of the remote program stayed intact. You have to remember, we're already 2/3 of the way through the year, and it was imperative that remote program remain robust. Having said that, our parents have been great. We were able to take care of a couple of situations where we actually didn't think we would end up. Had one situation in particular where we had a large number of students in a grade wanting to go from remote to in person, but again, through working with the families, we're able to work that out, and we're very pleased with the results. So at this time, I'd like to start off with Shaker Lane School and turn it over to Principal Kane to make a few comments about the organization of classes, etc.
Thank you, Dr. Clenchey. As Dr. Clenchey said, we have been working feverishly, the admin team, the administrative assistants, the staff, in looking at ways we can bring the kids back as soon as possible. So we are looking forward to the March 29th date, a week early. We did have 100% return. We did have to make a few phone calls, some emails, but we were able to reach all families. As Dr. Clenchey noted, our remote classrooms are staying intact. We heard from many families that, the integrity of the program, the way it started out, they'd like to finish the year strong in that model. So those remote programs will stay full remote, and our hybrid programs We are bringing back in, I'll start off with kindergarten. We are transitioning 4 students from remote learning to in-person learning. And all of them want full day K. So I think the decision next year is a great decision because every one of our in-person learners wanted full day K. So we'll have all of those students coming into full day K Monday through Friday. Our remote classrooms, a little bit more of a mix. We have about 4 to 5 in the remote classrooms that are choosing full day, which makes sense. Having a 5 or 6-year-old in front of a screen all day doesn't make as much sense as being in person. So those numbers weren't surprising. There are a handful of remote, full day remote students that will be in kindergarten. In grade 1, we have 6 students returning to full day in-person learning from our remote program. And we have 1 student moving from our hybrid program to full remote. So a few changes there. And in 2nd grade, we have 10 students. That's our largest group returning to in-person learning from remote learning. No students going the other way from hybrid to remote in kindergarten or 2nd grade. We have been working, Miss Deacon, very much so. I have to give her some props and kudos. She's been working hard on a couple of schedule changes because with the addition of full day kindergarten, we have to add 4 lunches for specialists and make sure that, you know, we're trying not upsetting the entire specialist schedule that we've created from the beginning of the year, which has a domino effect on special education services, reading support services, math support services. So she has worked her magic. We have figured out how to have all of our kindergarten students have lunch in the cafeteria, specials, and we still have a couple more things to coordinate, you know, busing, Tiger's Den, food services, the furniture, that will all be coming later next week. But I think as an admin team, we feel pretty confident that March 29th will be a good start for us. We are also anticipating 4 feet or more in several of the classrooms. So at a minimum 4 feet, probably 4.5 in several. So we won't be needing at this time to go down to that 3-foot minimum. I think that is all of our updates. I'm happy to answer questions at the end.
I would just like to ask each of you as you're going through this, can you just address lunch? Are we anticipating having students eating unmasked in classrooms, or are we going to be able to continue to use the cafeteria? Are there any changes that we think we're going to have to do to make this work relative to lunch?
Sure, absolutely. So all of our students, K to 2, are eating in the cafeteria 6 feet apart. We currently have 2 cohorts in there, and we're going to remain with 2 cohorts, except for 1 lunch period that will have 3 cohorts, but they're still 6 feet apart. And snack will also be offered in the lunchroom if they want it. We also have other spaces in the building that are 6 feet apart. We've had a snack schedule. Ms. Deacon created that early on in the year so that students could have snack outside of their classroom with the warmer weather. I think, too, that will be nice for us to get out and have snack outside.
For delivering lunch and snacks at Shaker Lane. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you. Brett?
Yeah, Michelle, thank you for that. Is it safe to assume that we can have doors open and everything else for lunch as well? So 6 feet with even more air circulation. Is that fair?
Yes. And we also have the air purifiers, windows open, doors open. Yeah.
I just want to make a clarification. Interior doors, exterior doors would be a safety risk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But we do have the HEPA filters in those common spaces.
Right. And when I'm thinking of interior doors, when I think of doors, like Dr. Clenchey said, I'm thinking of the doors going into the cafeteria at Shaker Lane. Those doors are open.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. My turn. So we had Andrea Romano and I spent time last week taking care of some spaces in the building. We did have to add some chairs to the cafeteria space. And I'll talk about that in a second in regards to lunch. In terms of the surveys, we had 25 requests for remote students to come in person over all 6 classrooms. So obviously that wasn't enough to turn any of the classes from remote into an in-person class. So we made phone calls today to talk with parents about that. So our our remote classes, all 6 of them will stay intact. We do have 10 requests across 3 grades for remote students to come to school in person and change their teacher. 4 in 3rd grade, 3 in 4th grade, and 3 in 5th grade. So I've reached out to teachers earlier this evening to talk about recommendations for those students in terms of placing them. And we'll be making those communications with teachers and parents tomorrow. In terms of lunch, we have been since the beginning eating in classrooms, but the distancing in our classrooms went from 6 feet to a little bit less than 6 feet. So we added 50 chairs at 6 feet of distance in the cafeteria. So our plan is we eat 1 grade level at a time. So in the 4 classrooms, we'll have every other row from the classrooms go down into the cafeteria, and there'll be assigned seating in the caf at 6 feet of distance. So in the classroom, it'll be more like 10 feet of distance in every other row. And then the other students will be in the cafeteria in chairs at 6 feet of distance. So that's how we've taken care of lunch. We've also talked with John Overcash and Alice and the cafeteria staff, who've done an amazing job about just to make their lives easier for just a little bit. So we're going to reduce the amount of choices in the cafeteria for the first couple of weeks, just until we get used to this system, because they're literally boxing up individual lunches each day for students. So instead of having 4 choices, we might have 2 choices for the first week or 2, just until we get into a good flow. How everything's going to work out, and then they'll go ahead and expand those choices again. But we also have created outdoor spaces. Andrea and I painted 150 dots on the yellow curb in front of Russell Street, all 6 feet apart. And we also have 2 sets of chairs outside right now, about 40 chairs in the circle and about 25 chairs up against the building, all at 6 feet. So kids can go outside for snack time and for lunchtime as well. We've already been out a couple of times on the nice weather days. We have all those plans in place. Again, on nice days, the classroom windows are open. We have the HEPA filters in all of our classrooms as well. I think that's it for us.
All right. Sure. Can I just ask, so it didn't sound like you had any students that were looking to go from hybrid to remote. Is that correct?
Interestingly, we have a couple.
Okay, you do. Okay.
I thought we had more, and I made some phone calls. A teacher stopped into my office at the end of the day about 4:30 today, and when I showed her the list, she said, "That's confusing to me." And so she said, "I'm surprised." And when I called, all 4 of the families said they made a mistake. And so in the couple that are left that are requesting full remote, I'm going to call them tomorrow to make sure that's really what they intended and that they didn't make a mistake on the form.
Okay. But you're down to just a couple that you're going to validate. If so, it's okay.
5 across all grades. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any questions yet? Someone?
I just have a question, Cheryl, about lunch. Are you going to switch the kids that go to, is it going to be the same kids every week that go to CAF, or are you going to switch them up?
Every other week. And so I'll do, I was anticipating having the teachers fill out like an index card with, row A and row B. And so, if you're in row A and I'm in row B, we're going to share a seat in the cafeteria, but you'll go one week and then I'll go the next week. So it'll go by row so the kids get
Okay, that's good. So they get out of the classroom more. Thank you.
And right after recess in all of our, right after lunch for all of our classes is recess. So even if they're out of the classroom they're not having lunch at the same time as their friend, they're going to go outside for recess immediately after.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I know we're receiving a little bit of snow tomorrow, but I'm going to assume that's going to be it for the year. We're going to be setting up canopies as soon as we can as well.
If I can chime in, I just got the email a couple hours ago. All of the tents, all of the canopies will be set up prior to the 29th. The high school might be a little delayed, but the high school isn't starting on the 29th. So all of the elementary schools and middle school will have the canopies up.
Okay. I just want to make sure I heard correctly. So the integrity of the fully remote classrooms is intact. They will have no in-person hybrid learners in those classrooms. It will all be all remote students every day for the remainder of the year in those full remote classrooms.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you. All right, Brad?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the creativity of figuring out the lunch. Those revolving rows just makes, I wouldn't have come up with that, but it's really smart. And I like the 10 feet distance in the classroom. So thank you for that, you and your team.
I do joke with the kids that in my job, after being a principal, I am going to deliver lunches somewhere. That's going to be my next job. So I'm trying to perfect it.
You could also be a professional dot painter. So your resume is really, really building up here.
Perfect.
All right.
And the middle school.
Thank you. I'll get started with some of the numbers. We didn't have quite 100% fill out the forms, but our admin assistants were working feverishly today to call those families and sort of round out the numbers. So we have just a couple more that we have to hear back from, but we're pretty sure we know which model they're going to choose based on where they currently are. If we look at where we are today, Littleton Middle School has about 28% of our students are fully remote at this point. According to the registration forms, that number drops down to 17%. So we actually had quite a few families choose to go from remote to full in person, 43 families to be exact. And that number was a little bit higher than we anticipated based on the survey that we had put out a couple of weeks ago. That number was around 25%. So I was surprised to see so many families that chose to go in person. I guess that speaks to the level of work that our teachers have done to create an effective classroom model, the work that they do to provide daily quality education, and the protocols that we have put in place to make sure that everyone is safe. So where we're at right now, we'll end up with, according to these numbers, 66 students of the 388 that we have at Littleton Middle School being remote. Everybody else will be in person. So it's quite a few. You know, it does present a formidable challenge for us to be able to think about spacing, because we have so many students and because they're not in the classrooms or in the same classroom all day long. We have to look at leveled math classes and language classes and how that impacts. And so we began to set up a few classrooms yesterday just to sort of mock it up and see what it would look like. Could we get 25, 28 desks in a classroom? Because we do have some classes that are going to have 25 to 28 students in person. We were able to do that, but just in the interest of full disclosure, it is at 3 feet. We don't have the luxury of having the 4 or 5.5 feet between desks. But we were able to get everybody in. You know, many of our classes, especially in 6th grade, are going to have well under 25 students per class. But as you move up in 7th and 8th grade, we do see some of those larger classes. So there will be some 3-foot distancing in many of our classes. Our lunch program largely won't change. We've been eating in the cafeteria the whole year. Our students don't eat in the classroom. They come to the cafeteria. They grab a pre-bagged lunch if they don't have their own, and they take an assigned seat in the cafeteria. We set up roughly 65, 70 desks in the cafeteria, all 6 feet apart, facing in the same direction. With these numbers, we're looking at about anywhere between 100 and 110 students per grade, and our cafeteria just won't be able to support that many students at 6 feet of distance. And so what we're looking at doing is appropriating a portion of our gym to be used for lunch service as well. We have the divider that can be had so that our phys ed teacher, Greg Gillette, can still maintain classes, but we still have a place to have students be able to eat. The nice part is it also would allow for easy access to the field area outside of the gym. And so we look forward to being able to get kids outside. So the plan as we currently have it will be to split the kids, half in the cafeteria, half in the lunch, and then make use of the outside as much as we possibly can, whether it's the canopy outside of the cafeteria, or giving kids an opportunity to go out, stretch, maybe run around a little bit, not have recess, but at least there's a little something to stretch the legs and kind of shake the sillies out before they head back to class. Outside of that, our program doesn't really change. The beauty of the model that we created was that it really allows us to bring students back without having to do schedule changes. If we do have changes, it'll be just to balance out a couple of classes that might be a little heavy, you know, in terms of in-person attendance. But outside of that, students don't have to change teachers, they don't have to change sections. And so everything will largely stay the same. The biggest change is just going to be walking into a classroom and seeing 25 students instead of 12. It'll certainly take some adjustment on the part of our educators and staff. But logistically speaking, we're going to be able to pull this off.
All right, questions or comments about the middle school? Brad?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. 25 still sounds like a lot to me. So just to be honest. And one of the things that became clear to me is when Mike and I and others were visiting classrooms over the last several months, just trying to measure and figure out what was possible. And Steve had his laser measure over there. Is that sometimes it seemed possible to get the right number of desks in a room, but it left no space at all for actual instruction. Like the teacher would have been just almost back up against the wall. If we're still going to have to broadcast or to teach remote learners as well, who are taking some of these classes, can you speak to the kind of instructional space that some of these classes will be? Because I understand the math and the grid. We can put the desk up against the walls and everything, but we also need to have space where instruction can happen.
Yeah, that was one of the things that there were two issues that we really had to look at. One was the fire doors that go from classroom to classroom. We wanted to make sure to leave plenty of space. I even called Littleton Fire a couple of weeks ago just to talk about those codes to make sure that we weren't violating any fire codes by having students. We managed to be able to allow full access to those doors if necessary. And the other key component was, could we put that many desks in a room without invading the teacher workspace? And thankfully, we didn't have to move a teacher desk an inch to be able to pull this off. So they'll still have the room in front of the camera, in front of their computers that they currently have, without having to be pushed up against the wall to do their work. So they should still be able to do that effectively.
That's great. Thank you for that, Jason.
You bet.
So the high school, probably somewhat premature to have Dr. Harrington talk about what he's going to do when he's still figuring out spaces in the rooms. As you can well appreciate, high schools with their scheduling have far more challenging with different sections of classes, etc. So they're currently working on that. A couple of other items that I'd like to mention this evening. K-8, with the increase in our students coming coming to school as of March 29th, we will have 118 new students riding our buses. What that means is that we have to redesign the number of our bus routes as well to make that happen. I was able to meet, Steve and I were able to meet with our Tiger's Den director, Mrs. Hull. Had a good conversation with her. We are going to offer a morning program as soon as we can get staffing on board. I think we should be able to get that sooner than later. It will not be at full capacity because we still require distancing. But having said that, and we certainly don't have the appetite at this point in time, Mrs. Hall sent out a survey, and I think in the end we had 5 people want to take part in the program that weren't already in it. But if that picks up at Russell Street School, we could accommodate 47 students in the after-school program, and at Shaker Lane, 31 students. So we're looking, both programs combined, 78. On a given year, Steve, you might be able to help me here a little bit. It varies per day. We're in the 80s, mid 80s. Sometimes we're a little over 100. So, we're not that far off. Steve, correct me if I've missed a day where we're up in the 130s. I don't think that happened, but
yeah, some of the Wednesday early release days get more crowded in the afternoon just because of the early release schedule. But yeah.
So we're really excited that we can offer that program. This hasn't been easy this year to continue the program. Very hard to find staff, and I give Mrs. Hall a lot of credit for being persistent and finding a way to make it work. So hopefully that will provide some additional support for our families who may need it as we get back to having more of our students in person.
Can I just go back and ask a question about the buses? So we're going to adjust the routes because we have more kids to pick up. So houses that we were going by or streets that weren't busy are now going to be busier. But are we anticipating adding any buses to the runs, or because of distancing? I mean, I know they've changed the guidelines for how the buses are going to be utilized. So by virtue of changing those guidelines, and Steve, maybe you can update us on what the guidelines are or the requirements are on the bus, and make sure that that allows us to meet the surge in bus demand with the current number of buses and drivers that we have in place.
So we believe, based on the current numbers, that we can support those parents that want to put their students back on the bus. We believe we can support that at this point in time with the current buses that we have. We're still running 8 buses. The guidelines are posted on the website. The state guidelines, but the state guidelines have changed the restrictions so that we can now fit 2 students on every seat in the bus. So we went from 1 student on a seat, i.e. 27 students on a bus, to now we can fit 54 students on a bus. We can put two students on a seat as long as they're masked. The windows have to be open to get the fresh air and those protocols in place. But your student, if you put your student on a bus, they will have assigned seats. We will try to accommodate siblings sitting in the same seat, but that may not always be the case. So your student may be sitting next to another student in an assigned seat. But that's how it's going to work at this point in time. And we're actually working through those numbers now. We just got the data at the same time the principals did. It takes a little bit longer to look at the routes and reroute the routes. We are working on that now, and that information will go out to parents next week. We hope to reach out to those parents and let them know what the bus number is and what the assigned seat number is.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All right. Dr. Clinton, you talked about the high school. Are we getting ready to sort of register, send out a form to have people really let us know with no uncertainty, or with full certainty what their plans are for the rest of the remainder of the school year?
That's right. We'll be sending out a form to parents tomorrow. And Dr. Harrington, I don't want to not give you a chance to speak if you would like to.
Oh, yeah, I'll be happy just to chime in on that particular question and maybe speak a little bit to the cafeteria question that the chairman had raised earlier. So as far as the survey, it's really pivotal, just as it was at all the other schools, to know exactly where the students will fall in terms of making their decision to either remain remote or start remote or come back 5 days in person. So it's going to be clearly explained exactly what is laid out for the parents and the students in terms of a decision to make. It's a really simple Google form. Thank you for all the people who contributed to the development of that, especially at the other schools, because we just sort of piggybacked on that and made some adjustments that are unique to the high school. But it's pretty much the same Google form at the other schools. And that will be going out tomorrow with very clear directions. At this point, we have about 280 students who are hybrid. And so one of the big questions we have is how many students will go in person or how many will go remote from that hybrid group. 155 students are remote. How many are going to stay remote or go in person? So that's, and then we'll be able to make room arrangements and adjustments based on the class sizes. Based on a preliminary review of even just the semester break when people had an opportunity to change their learning model, we think we can kind of, guess roughly where it will fall, but Jason was in for a little bit of a surprise at the middle school with the number of people who went in person. We know for sure that the in-person component is particularly popular at the elementary level. And there may be some students, and just in passing anecdotally, that I've talked to who are really thriving at the high school in the remote model, and they might want to continue there or opt for that to finish out the year. So we'll see what happens. The numbers will go up, the survey or Google form will go out tomorrow, and then we'll be we'll have a tight turnaround next week with a clear deadline that we really need to know if we're going to operationalize this. And I want to, in advance, thank the custodial crew, in particular, Bill Maher and Fernando Fernandez, as well as Steve Mark, and is sort of coordinating all this to help with the the addition of the canopies that were mentioned previously for the cafeteria. Hopefully, we'll have some warmer weather coming soon, and we can enjoy the outdoor space of the patio and the picnic tables like we did in the fall. And so we're looking forward to that. The other thing I want to mention about the cafeteria is we've added an additional space now outside the auditorium near where the balcony is as you head out from the front lobby of the school building, and added tables already there for cafeteria usage. So the preparation is already underway at the high school. We also have identified some other spaces if we need it for the cafeteria, perhaps partial usage of the gym for a cafeteria space if needed. It all depends on where the numbers fall for the student selections of where they want to go. We will have to move some classrooms around, perhaps. Hopefully there'll be a limited number where there might be a larger class size. We're trying to maintain that 3 feet of space. We have to maintain that 3 feet of space in the classroom. But some of our classrooms are larger. They're double size classrooms. They were built that way. So we have a few of those spaces that we might have to switch a teacher depending on the mod of the day or the period of the day, where there's they have a small class of 5 kids and the other teacher has a class of 25, and we can just switch the room because that teacher with 5 kids has a larger room. So we're going to be able to figure all that out in the coming weeks. Happy to provide an update at a future school committee meeting when we have those numbers with some additional details. I'm also happy to answer any other questions you might have tonight about it. But we're excited about getting the kids back as many as we can manage on April 12th. And we're feeling confident that we'll be prepared to do that, and then work out any kinks we need to over the vacation, and then come right back strong after the vacation.
All right, thank you. Any questions for John? Justin?
Not necessarily Dr. Harrington, but just kind of overall, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. I just, I'm thrilled. I just want to thank Dr. Clenchy and the rest of the administrative staff and leadership team. I think this is a big deal going back 329. And I also want to thank the community. I know a lot of parents advocated for their families and for their kids. And as I've said time and time again, that's one of the best parts of this job is listening to families advocate for their children and trying to help them and assist them. So I applaud the efforts of the administration to get back a week before. I know it's only a week, but if you're a hybrid learner and you're only in 2 days a week to get the full 5 days, I'm telling you, it is impactful. And I thank you all very, very much. I had a quick question, or I believe that we'll probably get some questions about those that possibly need to quarantine as it relates to reducing the distance below 6 feet. So I believe the assumption is that if you're an in-person learner and if you're identified as a close contact, that they'll be able to there'll be some sort of live streaming situation where they can kind of tag along in the classroom. So we're not completely out of the hybrid model, although we're looking to kind of offer a fully in-person situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Justin. We will still be live streaming to students when necessary.
Okay, terrific. And then also, I just want to say that I think the decision in terms of protecting the integrity of the remote option was the right call there. And we heard a lot of parents advocate that remote has worked well for them. And to sort of mix that classroom up with 2.5 months to go potentially may have been problematic. So again, I want to just say that I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the hard work that went into that. In terms of, now I have a question for you, Dr. Harrington. So in terms of the high school, do you anticipate having a problem with 3 feet if you bring the majority of the population back, or should 3 feet not be a problem?
We think based on the number of students who are likely either to remain remote or go remote, probably remain remote because it works for them, we'll be able to maintain the 3 feet in the classrooms. The number we currently have in mind for a standard classroom at the high school is about 18 students in the room. We have really favorable numbers at a small high school. Our class sizes are really great in comparison to other schools and the challenges they might have at schools, at some of the high schools that are 4 times the size of us. But just the way the classrooms are laid out, we think we'll be able to maintain that 3 feet for sure. And we have to. That's part of one of our constraints, and we'll move space around accordingly if we need to, adjust rooms where there might be a need for a larger space with a class that's over 20 or 22, 25, if we get up to those numbers. Keith and I discussed it, the possibility of that today. Keith Kamara, I really appreciate his work on the schedule, but also on all the room arrangements and the measuring tapes, going around from room to room and making sure that we can maintain this distance. And we're going to have a rough idea of how many rooms we'll need to move based on if more students than anticipated opt for in person. But it is a fluid situation. We have to acknowledge that, and we would have to report back to the school committee as well as, of course, the superintendent if we ran into a real, surprising, thing with the number of kids wanting to come back in person. Right now, I think it will, I'm not going to throw a number. I have some percentages in my mind of how many will remain remote, but we'll see what happens next week.
Okay. Thank you. We won't ask you to guess. But that's nice to hear that you think you're, with the sort of that enrollment or survey form going live tomorrow, that you'll be able to come back on the 12th, which again is excellent because that's not even sort of a mandated date yet for high school. So again, applaud your efforts. Just a quick advertisement for Tigers Den, since I'm on the budget subcommittee, that if that program has room and you need before school or after school care, we could, it would be great to fill those seats and receive a little bit of revenue as well. And then just sort of real quickly, like PSA here on COVID. I mean, just because we're bringing the children back to school doesn't mean that this is over. We all take this very seriously and we need everyone's help in terms of the community. So school is definitely a very safe place. The risk of transmission is very low because all of the safety protocols are in place. But we need everyone on the weekends and after school to do their part in terms of, being a Littleton resident, whether you're in sports or out of sports or backyard barbecues, all that stuff. I mean, it's unlikely that we're going to lose the district at this point in time because we kind of know what to do and we know the risk of in-school transmission, but everyone has to do their part. And it's not over just because the kids are coming back. So I think it's kind of important that those that are still on the call hear that message. And I just want, going back a week early, the tremendous effort that was put forth this week, I applaud your efforts and I genuinely thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else? Timon?
I just want to thank you. I just want to piggyback on something Justin said about the remote classes, about people being in quarantine. How are we going to police the kids that just, like in the upper grades, that just want to stay home for the day? Or do we have a plan for that? I mean, I know that there will be a few here and there.
Well, Timberland, first of all, it's important to remember that our high school students, if they want to be remote and the parents endorse it, they will be remote. So if students come back in person, then we would expect the same of those students as we would if we were running a full in-person model in our schools. So if they're ill, that's an acceptable reason for not being at school. And as I said last meeting, if you get out of bed and you just don't want to change out of your pajamas, that's not a good reason to not go to school. So, as both Dr. Harrington and I pointed out, this isn't going to happen overnight. I mean, we've, as a result of how we've offered education this year, our students are used to different things and they have more freedom, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But to get back into the routines is going to take a bit of time. But I know Dr. Harrington and Mr. Como will certainly have those conversations and send communication home as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Brett?
Yeah, I would just say to add to that, one of the reasons I like the hybrid capability remaining is that we don't want kids coming to school if they think they might have symptoms. And we don't want them coming to school because they think, as they might in a normal year, Dr. Clinchey, thinking, well, I don't want to miss a day of class. I've got to keep up. The ability to be cautious and still keep up with the schoolwork, I think will enable us to keep this rolling. I hope families, again, like Tim was saying, I hope they don't try to treat it as just a frivolous thing, but also if your kid's sick or you think your kid's sick, keep them home. That's the way this works, especially now they're going to be under the 6-foot threshold, and there will be, my guess is, will be a lot more people classified by public health department as close contacts. I do have a question. One thing that struck me, I think it was you, Michelle, just talking about, hey, we've got everything figured out except for busing, Tiger's Den, furniture, just everything figured out except for all these things that still seemed really big. And I heard someone, maybe it was you or Ms. Temple, saying that you should have access to the furniture like in the middle next week. One thing that struck me from our last conversation is, again, I forgot who made the comment, but just, how much pride and time teachers put into prepping their rooms so the students feel welcome the moment they walk in. I just want to acknowledge the fact that we're asking you to plan to do that, double the student capacity size, while also teaching, your staff while also teaching it out. We've heard from several residents volunteering to help, and I'd like to volunteer, school committee members as well. If we need to have a community let's move some furniture day on a weekend, please let us know. My guess was an email, you get 50 volunteers. We can, if that's something we can handle safely, and if there's a need there, this is a community effort. We appreciate all the leadership y'all providing, but if there's something we can do to make it a little easier or just to knock it out a little faster, please let us know. People will show up.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Timlin
Brad.
is really good at
I agree.
moving desks. So
Thank you. I don't want that to seem like a daunting task, because believe it or not, that's a little easier than what we've had to do as far as providing coverage for our students with disabilities that are coming back, the services that they need, moving around, the math support. Like, those changes are monumental that we accomplished this week. These other things, getting furniture out of easily accessible areas that we have them, we know where they are, we know how many each classroom needs, that will be a quick turnaround. So I appreciate that. We have lots of families. I want to thank all the families that have emailed us to provide support. But the busing, I know Robin Healy's been working on it with Chris. So they are already moving things around. So those are still some finite details that need to be worked out. But the furniture, don't worry, we got that. Thank you.
If I could just add a piece, I just want to say thank you to the custodial staff. They have been working kind of en masse to figure out these issues. When we started to work on the cafeteria last week, Bill brought over the whole group of custodians to move the tables. They literally had to pick them up and put them up on the stage. And we were able to accomplish that task in about an hour and a half. Because Bill just said, what time do you need us? And they came over en masse. And I know then they have been working at the middle school together collectively this week. So thank you to that group, Bill and the custodial staff, for their efforts to help us.
So thanks for pointing that out. And again, it's just not lost on any of us, the fact that you're doing all this, you're doing the planning, you're rearranging all these schedules while also teaching during a pandemic. We know it's challenging, and we appreciate you stepping up. Thank you.
All right. I am going to ask for a motion in a moment, just so that we can document this transition, similar to the way we made motions when we decided to open the school year in hybrid mode, and when we did do that 1 week of remote after a holiday. We always did that by vote. I think it's important that we continue to do that. But before I entertain that motion, I would like to echo other school committee members in our thanks and appreciation for the turnaround time and the effort being expended to do this on such a timely basis during the school year, right? When we did a lot of our planning back in July and August, school wasn't open yet. The school actually opened later than it normally does, which gave us a little more buffer to be ready. We don't have that luxury to do that this way. We are ahead of the curve, ahead of the deadline, ahead of the curve. We were ahead of the curve back in September. If everybody remembers, we started on day one with in-person instruction across the board. Many districts did not do that. many districts phased it in. They stayed out remote for 2-4 weeks and then gradually got into in-person instruction. We hit the ground on the first day. We had one break where we chose to be remote fully as a district. Other than that, we've been providing our in-person instruction throughout the year. Our ability to provide streaming to the classroom for remote learners is significantly different than the way many other districts are doing it, where on many of the days that their hybrid students are remote learners, they're working primarily asynchronously. They may touch base with the teacher during the day, but they are not getting a steady dose of instruction through live streaming of a classroom. We are ahead of the curve on that, and that's a testament to our staff. Our remote delivery of instruction for our fully remote learners, we've heard accolades from our parents. I will say all of this is relative, right? We shouldn't be celebrating that we did this well. We would prefer not to be in this business. But the fact of the matter is we are in this business and we've done a really good job on a relative basis compared to many, many other districts. I know there are a few out there that have been able to do a little bit more, but we are way ahead of the vast majority of districts in Massachusetts and across the nation. And the fact that we are going to be back with full in-person 5 days a week before the deadlines being set forth by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is, again, just a tribute to Littleton. We're very fortunate to be Littleton. The challenges that many other districts face, we don't have. That allows us to be more flexible, to be more responsive, to be more proactive. We clearly have taken advantage of that in the best of times, but it's even more evident that we're able to take advantage of it in the worst of times. So, thinking about it from a relative basis, I would ask that everybody keep that in mind and appreciate what our staff has done for our students and our families. We're very, very fortunate. I'll leave it at that. And at this point, I would entertain a motion.
Sure. I would like to motion that K-5 starts March 29th for full in-person learning 5 days a week, with the high school following no later than April 12th.
K through 8, you mean?
I'm sorry, is that what I said?
You said K through 5.
K through 8, my bad. It was my one moment and I blew it.
I'll second it.
All right, motion made and seconded. I would ask for public input before we did this, but our people are so good at getting their hands up. I didn't see any, so my assumption is everybody's okay for the moment. So at this time, I will take the roll call vote. Brad
Austin, yes.
Matt
Hunt, yes.
Timlin
Rassius, yes.
Justin McCarthy, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing more kids in more days.
Mike, just if my math is right, I just want to acknowledge the fact that you're talking about where we are relative to other timelines. We've made this vote, right? So our middle school will be coming in 4 weeks ahead of the timeline. Our high school, there's not even a state mandated timeline. And we'll be in, well, obviously well ahead of it. I really appreciate everyone's work towards that. And I think we'll have, if my math is right, 12 weeks left, starting the 29th at least of in-person instruction, minus a school vacation week. But 12 weeks is a lot, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Great. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is a discussion on pool testing and consideration of requiring pool testing for extracurricular activity participation. So the reason this is on the agenda is that the Board of Health debated this concept at their most recent meeting. They are going to debate it again, conceivably, depending on what we decide to do or not do as a school committee. What they were advocating for is requiring athletes and other students that participate in extracurricular activities, that in order to do that, it would be mandatory that those students participate in the pool testing program. I had a talk with Lisa Flanagan, the chair of the Board of Health. I told her that we would take this up And then depending on what we did or didn't do, if the Board of Health felt that they wanted to continue to have a discussion about it, we would join them at their meeting next Wednesday and see what transpired. So my question for the school committee and input from the administration is, do we think it is appropriate and a good idea to require athletes and other students participating in extracurricular activities to have to participate in the pool testing program in order to be able to participate in those sports or other activities? Timlin?
Mike, can I ask you, in your discussion with Lisa, did they say what their thought process was on this? I mean, I'm not for or against it yet, but we've had basketball where we didn't have, that's indoors contact. I mean, we've already had 2 sports seasons. We've already had extracurricular activities going on in the schools that haven't had any COVID cases. I'm just not sure to put this on the student athletes and put this on an extracurricular activity where that it would make sense to me. I'm not sure what their thought process was. I did watch their meeting and it was kind of confusing to me because I had wished that the Board of Health had stepped up and done some testing in town so that our town employees, like our teachers, could go and get tested when they were close contacts without having to scramble for places to go get tested. Instead of telling us that we have to have our students required so that they can, play lacrosse or baseball, which baseball is not a non-contact sport. They're more contact at lunch than they are in baseball. That's just my opinion. I'm not sure what their thought process was.
If you watch the meeting, you have more input than I do.
I have watched the 2 meetings because they discussed it again last night.
Oh, did they? I've not watched either meeting, and Lisa and I did not have that type of discussion. We just kind of talked about process for our 2 committees to figure this out. But I did not ask her. I figured depending on what we feel or how we feel and what we think, if we decide that this is a good idea and we want to vote on it tonight, then I think that takes the Board of Health out of the equation. If we don't support it tonight, then I would expect that we would get an opportunity to be with the Board of Health to find out from the horse's mouth.
Can they mandate us to do this? I mean, doesn't that take away a parental right, a decision by a parent? I mean, and so we're going to say to a kid, if your parent says, I don't want my kid tested, then that kid can't play his or her senior year of sports. I just, especially where we don't see any asymptomatic in the pool testing right now. They had mentioned something about crossing lines, crossing out of Littleton. I'm I cross out of Littleton every day. And I'm sure most people here cross out of Littleton every day. I guess you can tell that I'm not for it. I mean, if majority rules on it, then sure. But I just think we are doing the pool testing in school. We've had 2 sports seasons. There has been no cases that I know of. I think we had to couple of times. I mean, and we were playing soccer in the fall where we went into the red and we didn't have any cases on the girls team. I know that. I don't know. I'll give someone else a chance to talk.
Well, your question was, I believe, can the Board of Health require it?
Yes.
And then I think you sort of led into another question can we actually require it of our students, even if we want to? So I don't know the answer about the Board of Health. I do know that in a public health emergency, which the pandemic clearly qualifies in a broad sense, that their normal authority is expanded significantly. Having said that, it doesn't make it universal. There are still limits. I did ask our council about can we as a school committee require students, a subset of students to be required to do something like that. She indicated that it would be treated like drug testing in athletics and extracurricular activities, which has been upheld by the courts in some circumstances. So long as there is a reasonable basis for the restrictions, e.g. public health data or medical analysis showing enhanced risk of transmission, it would likely be upheld. Our authority to do this as a school committee would be upheld, although there may need to be some distinguishing between contact sports and others like football and others non-contact like golf.
Right,
So,
which we're already in football season.
right. So, right.
Is MIAA requiring it? I haven't seen anything. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
So typical lawyerese, right? She was equivocal.
Yeah.
But, basically saying that there is a real probability that, a school committee done in the right context, the authority to do this could be upheld. She doesn't guarantee it. Out of the correct context, she's basically saying it wouldn't be upheld, but there might be, I wouldn't call it narrow necessarily, but specific context and circumstances, as long as you're, delineating those and explaining why you're doing it, that you might very well be able to get it through or supported, your authority to do so supported. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay.
Matt?
Yeah, just kind of playing off Timlin. I think Timlin mentioned, that we hadn't done this, of course, for earlier sports where basketball, and I know my own kids are playing basketball every night and they're right in each other's face. I'm not saying I'm for or against it either, but just to put it in a little bit more perspective, we didn't have the access to pool testing when basketball started, which is a biggie. And now we're also seeing the variance. The other thing that we have to consider when going forward is that we now are going to have 100% or full 5-day in person. So there's going to be a lot more chance for spread. And it's just another way to watch for asymptomatic cases that rise. And in my opinion is, a sport is something that, I've always felt that it's a privilege. So it's not something that you're guaranteed if you, but then again, I don't know how much it would affect, or if we could would be right in implementing a policy on it. I would have been interested to hear, what Katrina and some other scientists have said on the matter, but I do think there are a couple of things in support of it. Again, I'm not saying either way. I could very easily go either way on the subject, but I do think it's a little different than it was in the winter. Even though, like you said, baseball you're not really coming in close contact, but just to put it into perspective.
Brett?
I would just like to note there's so many contact baseball jokes that I'm not going to make right now. The question is, do I want this? Yes. I'm not sure that, I wasn't sure about the authority. So I came up with this kind of 3 types of questions. One is, do we have the authority? And Mike, you've addressed that. If there is abundant medical evidence, which gets to Matt's point about, I'd like to hear from some more people. Like, I don't know if I have enough information to say we could make that claim honestly. The second is it proper? Like, what this is Timlin's question of, to what degree is this school committee going to tell parents how to kind of medically kind of treat their kids or get medical information about their kids? And the third is, I guess one of my biggest questions about what the Board of Health did is the definition of extracurricular is really freaking broad, right? So is this theater? Is this Model UN? Is this the science Olympiad or the academic decathlon? I mean, extracurricular is when we just spent 30 minutes last week hearing about all the extracurricular activities our students are doing from the K through 12 levels. If we're requiring every kid who's doing something extracurricular in the language they use, then it's going to be most kids in our district. I'm certainly not going to be comfortable with that. Do I want them to? Absolutely. Do I want to compel them to? Probably not. And so I guess I would have 2 questions then. One is, are there more informal ways of encouraging people who are participating in certain activities to pool test? I don't know if this is talking to captains, I'm just talking to coaches, not to coerce, but to inform, educate. Is there something we can do using kind of the team ethos and the leadership structure in place? The second is I would want to learn more from, let's hear from John. Let's hear from Katrina. Let's hear from people who read more about these things and can tell us, hey, these three sports, this is worthwhile, but I'm not sure that these activities we really need to require it for everyone who's working on the stage production of Romeo and Juliet, which is an extracurricular activity. So if there's a vote tonight, I'm not going to be, I don't think I'll be prepared to vote because I don't think I have enough information for that, even if I can get satisfactory answers to the first two kind of categories of questions.
Yeah, I think Brad makes a good point as far as going at it through informal means might be the best bet as far as going through captains or some way to encourage and educating those who are participating in extracurricular activities. Hey, this would be a really positive thing, not only for you, but for the team, for the town. If there's any way of doing that, I would certainly support it. And again, I'm much in the same boat as Brad. I don't feel I have all the information for me to make a good judgment on, but right now that would be the way I would be leaning, is something more informal than just a mandate.
Justin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I echo a lot of the same statements that have been made. At this point, I kind of have more questions than answers as to, how many athletes do we have participating in extracurricular activities currently? Are we still hovering around 65%, Ms. Snow, in terms of the general population? And if so, is our athlete base or our extracurricular base around the same 65%? Because it's a bit of a different conversation if they're a greater participant than the average population, or if they're significantly less of a participant than the population, just to sort of framework what we're thinking. I also agree that potentially these students are closer to young adults than they are children, and it might be helpful to sort of guide them to make some decisions on their own as it relates to the importance of taking some responsibility. One of the things that I discussed with others was I'm not so concerned about the risk of transmission at school or on the field. It's more off the field. And I think the captains ought to have a team meeting and talk about the integrity of the sport, or trying to keep the team together as they get into the playoff season. Because if they do have symptomatic spread or asymptomatic spread on the team, they might end up forfeiting at the end of the season. And it would be much better to be participating in the program, and you might lose one player than to lose the entire squad. That's the reason why you've seen it at the professional level, because there's a lot of money involved and they don't want to forfeit those games. And with our young athletes here, this might be their last chance to finish out their senior season, and they don't want to have it be a COVID forfeit. So I think there's a lot of good reasons for them to participate. I'm not suggesting that we mandate it, but I'm suggesting that we have an adult conversation with these folks, and let's try to figure out what the level of participation is now, and let's see if we can help improve that.
Brett?
Yeah, assuming that if we move forward, we're going to narrow the definition from extracurricular to certain types of all sports or certain types of sports. It'd be helpful to me to hear from Dr. Harrington about what and assuming then that we're thinking mainly about high school sports. Does he have a read on this?
I'd like to follow up with Mike Lynn for sure. I know there was a poll taken in the Midwatch League. I don't know if everyone had responded to it. Two schools, rather large high schools, Shrewsbury and Algonquin, which is a regional school, Northborough, Southborough, I think are doing pool testing, but the bulk of the schools, including neighboring Bromfield, are, at this point in time, to the best of my knowledge, based on the spreadsheet that was shared with me, are not doing it. There's probably a wide variety of reasons in each community. Many of them have already been mentioned by school committee members tonight. I think there's a logistics issue for sure with remote learners or who are allowed to participate in athletics after school. How would we conduct that? Because right now we'd have to alter or add additional pool testing. We do it during lunchtime. It's gone effective, super well. Nurses have done a phenomenal job. Thanks, Lynn Snow, for all her coordination getting it off the ground. I would say logistically, you'd have to think about how we'd manage it and roll it out. And there's one of the things that it's interesting, Fitchburg, which is a large, more urban district, what they're doing, Jeremy Roach, the principal there, said It's not required, but they're strongly encouraged. And I get the sentiment now, like with back to Justin's comments and Brad, about encouraging it, but having some leadership in the sports teams, getting that message out. We know that positive peer pressure can be a really good thing, especially if they have, something they love at stake, which is participation in athletics. I think that's, a good way to go to get started as we try, I think it'd be worth gathering some additional information take a week, to sort of see, maybe think about it, rather than make a decision tonight. I think the consent issue is real. There might be some 18-year-olds who might not want to. I don't know if their parents might want them to. And there's other activities. Some people might say, well, why aren't we doing this for, a chorus or if at some point or a band, although that's not a co-curricular, that's a class at LHS. So there's a whole, and that was brought up too by school committee members. So I do have, I think, similar to you, lots of questions about it. My read on this is to strongly encourage it and see just what authority we would have even to mandate it. Since right now we're asking people to opt in as a school. So there are some high schools, I think it might be Oakmont, which is another regional school, who might be testing everybody weekly or athletes weekly. I can find out. I know the principal there very well. I'll reach out to him. So that's my read on it right now. I would definitely encourage student athletes to participate, but just as we do all our students.
Mike, just one final comment. This assumes we haven't taken a vote yet to extend the pool testing past April 19th. If we're going to mandate this, or if the Board of Health will try to mandate this, then that assumes that pool testing will be available. Just to note that.
I think to give a few of my own personal thoughts about this. I am not in favor of requiring this. I have significant concerns from a civil libertarian point of view if that's the right way for us to do anything. I do agree that we should be working on our entire student population to increase the level of participation in the pool testing program. And I think that we should be, we've been very busy, obviously, the last couple of weeks with things that are even more important. But I think that, if we get a chance to take a breath, that this should be something that we start to focus on. What's the best way, the most effective way, the most age-appropriate way to get more of our students participating in the pool testing program. Typically, I will say also that I know that coaches and the athletic director have been having significant discussions with their teams each season to make sure they understand what is expected of them in terms of their behavior. Justin, you said it right. Like you need to band together as a group to protect each other in the integrity of your season. Because for you seniors, this is the last shot. If we're out for 2 weeks of a 5-week season, that's brutal. So, I'm not saying that adolescent male and females are going to take that and run with it the way we would hope they would, but the message is clearly going out. So I think we should really try to get our participation up across the board. I really hesitate to target a particular subgroup because we think that they're more, I feel like some people are thinking it will work, right? Because they want to play. And I think that's not a good way to think about it. It's easier in some ways for someone to opt out of Model UN this year because it's COVID anyway. And if you're going to make me test, forget it. I'll just come back next year when I don't have to worry about it. Asking a kid not to play or requiring to make that tough decision on an athletic team or another extracurricular activity that's more compelling, I really struggle with that. So we're not going to ask for it across the board. I don't think we should be asking for it at all. I also think that all of our sports have taken mitigation efforts to play the sport. So we're not talking about football as normally played, basketball as normally played. We're talking about COVID basketball and COVID football. So I think that, some of that is already being done, which I think is important and doesn't necessarily support the argument that the athletes are more at risk than the other students. They are in some ways, but not as much more at risk than we would assume without thinking about the mitigation efforts that have been taken to make it safer to do this in this framework. I think that's about it. I do agree with Justin. It would be interesting to see if the athletes are participating at the same level, because that would even make me more unlikely to ask them to step up and do, require it. I do have significant concerns about our authority to even do it, even if it is the right thing to do. But I'll be honest, even if we do have the authority, I am not prepared to be the one to say that we're going to do this. I'll get all in on pushing for more pool testing by everybody, absolutely. But I want to do that by encouraging people to do it rather than coercing people to do it. So that's where I am right now. I'll open it up for public input. I see a couple of hands up. Before I do, I just want to ask if anybody else has anything they want to offer prior to public input on this. All right, Dorothy, why don't we see what we can get?
Amy Tez, please state your question, your street, and your name.
Hi, it's Amy Tez, 117 Whitcomb Avenue. I just wanted to say that I think with regard to pool testing for sports, it just feels harmful to the town's pool testing initiative to present pool testing, athletes as a burden to them. And I agree. I think it's worth discussing and educating people more than going down the road of mandating. But I think it's important to remember that sports activities are higher contact activities, and I'm glad that mitigation strategies are working. But it does concern me that, it's an area that maybe more mitigation strategies like pool testing may be worth it. And I think it feels to me like we'd want some consistency across all school related activities if kids are in close contact. And I'm just wondering if you plan to have Katrina or somebody from the Board of Health in this forum to talk more about that, and what other efforts we can be doing to kind of support the community and in engaging in the pool testing and getting the numbers up. I don't know that this is the right point in time for me to bring this up, but I did write a letter to you all just asking a little bit about mental health. And if you want me to hold off on that, I can wait till later.
If you don't mind, Amy, I
Yep,
appreciate
not a problem.
you do that. Yes, thank you. It helps us keep us focused.
Yep.
In terms of asking the Board of Health or anyone else that has expertise, I think that this kind of got popped on us fairly recently, so we haven't had time to really frame how we want to proceed with this. I do expect, based on what I'm hearing, I don't think that we are going to vote in favor of this tonight. That would probably trigger a meeting and discussion with the Board of Health. And I think at that point, we would definitely have an opportunity to get some input from them, obviously, but also in very possibly from other informed people about this. If we don't get it there, or even if we do, we might choose to come back to a school committee meeting to debate this further. And then at that point, I would definitely think that would be a good idea. Mike Lynn, the athletic director, we might want to have weigh in with some information and have him talk about what he's seeing other districts do in this regard. So I think that we would look to do that through that. In terms of your question about, just generally speaking, what can we do to increase the participation in pool testing? Like I said, I think regardless of what the outcome of this discussion is, that discussion needs to happen. That's separate from this. And again, I think we would have liked to have done more up till now. It's just we got a little distracted by all the other stuff that was on our plate. But I think we can get back to that and try to get that up, get those numbers up.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and please, yeah, well, there'll definitely be another opportunity for public input. So
thanks.
Don't run away.
John Kay, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
It's John Kurzwick, 171 Hartwell Avenue. I was in the Board of Health meeting last night as well, and I I didn't quite get all the reasons why for the mandate, but my position on this is that we got to stop treating our kids like they're bioterrorists. I mean, all the data we have keeps showing, we're poking, we're prodding them, we're telling them to wear masks, we're telling them don't show up at school, stay 6 feet apart, and we keep doing it. And every time we test them, well, they're not sick. They don't have it. So, this is just more going the wrong direction, in my opinion. And it's very frustrating. And it's low value add. It's low value add. Why is it low value add? The data shows 99%, right? I think Miss Snow has the data, or somebody on the board has the data. 99% negative. Okay. Now, full disclosure, my kids, they are in the pool testing. Okay. They don't have any after school activities, so they wouldn't really be that impacted. But to me, it's emblematic of some of the failures of the public health policies that we have going on. I was looking at the slide presentation from, I think it was the last meeting, where they had the survey of parents about which control measures they thought were the most important. And what was ranked last? What was ranked last was keeping symptomatic people or doing symptomatic screening, as that was the last infection control. Now, if you had asked that question in 2019, everybody would have said, no, if you're sick, you stay home. So, it's just frustrating that we keep harping on the kids when it's the adults. It's the adults that are going to spread it. It's the adults that are going to spread it to the kids. Okay. So if you implement this and you mandate this, do it for the whole staff. Do it for the whole staff. Do it for all the kids. Don't just pick on the kids that are doing after school activities. All right. Thank you.
John.
Thank you, John.
That's it. I believe. Yeah.
At this point, I would like to ask if there is anybody would like to propose a motion to support requiring pool testing for athletes and/or students participating in extracurricular activities. I hear none. Okay, that's fine. As I said, I have talked with Lisa Flanagan, the chair of the Board of Health, to let her know that we would talk about this tonight. Now that we have, I will let her know what that conversation ended up with, and then if she wants and thinks it's appropriate, we'll either have a joint meeting. We'll post in case we are there in quorum by virtue of posting. That will allow us to have discussion and debate and take votes if we want to at that meeting. We certainly don't have to, but posting gives us the flexibility. So we'll work that out with Dorothy and with the Board of Health. And we will let everyone know what's going to happen. All right. All right. Thank you for that.
So, Mike, do I understand this correctly? So what you just said is that we possibly have a joint meeting with the Board of Health where we would vote possibly as a school committee during that forum instead of one of our usual ones. Is that correct?
It will give us the flexibility to do that if we want to. For instance, when we post for joint meetings with the FinCom and in the select board, it's not just because all 5 of us are going to be in the room. It allows us to have discussion amongst ourselves. And if we decided we wanted to vote, we'd be able to. If we hadn't posted, we could still come together in a quorum. We just wouldn't be allowed to debate amongst ourselves nor vote. So it just gives us flexibility. It would not be an expectation necessarily, but it just gives us the flexibility and the cover to do that. It's not uncommon that when 2 boards are going to meet where both of them have a quorum, it would typically be understood that they're both going to post for it just to adhere to the open meeting.
So we could if we had to, but
right, but we don't have to.
All right, that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We are at the next section specifically for input from interested citizens. So I think Amy wanted to get back with us, but if anybody else has anything else they want to bring up, now's a good time to do it.
Are you ready? Question?
Yep.
Amy Tez, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi again, Amy Tez, 117 Wickham Ave. So I just wanted to follow up from the letter that I sent you all. I'm wondering if you have a little more information about the efforts or interventions that you'll have in place to support the social emotional transition for kids as they come into school for more time or come back from remote to in-person learning, and what those monitoring or interventions might be for kids who might show more mental health concerns. And I'm also wondering if you'd consider forming some sort of a mental health task force so we can connect between school and community and just support kids and families as best as possible, much in the way that the science folks have stepped up for you guys. And, you know, like I mentioned, I am a psychotherapist, but I'm also a very interested parent in this. So just wondering what you're all thinking and what the schools are talking about.
All right, Dr. Clenchey or Lynn Snow, I guess that would be up your guys' alleys.
I'm going to turn it over to Lynn in a minute, but we have had some initial conversations with our clinical team, and we're certainly aware that we need to have things in place. As I mentioned earlier this evening, we are in pretty close contact with most of our students. We'll continue to do that. I really need an assessment from the clinical team, and I do like the idea of bringing some experts in to the conversation as well, as we're finding our way, because we know we're going to have increased needs. That's not a surprise to anybody. So you really opened some doors for me tonight, in terms of thinking we do have people in our community that have some expertise, and it would be nice to have them at the table. I think at some point in time, we would reach out probably on a school basis to the broader community and have those conversations. But I want to make sure that we had a process in place and we had a good idea of some of the things we needed to venture into. And Ms. Snow, I'm going to turn over to you for some comments as well.
I absolutely love the idea of bringing a task force together for this purpose specifically. I think there's no question, and the conversations have been happening throughout the entire school year. And I think the clinical team has been working tirelessly to support the students' needs and the increased needs, and being very responsive to the needs that parents have articulated, that students have articulated to us. I think the wheels are already turning. The clinical staff are already thinking of ways that they can support the transition back. I think the conversation needs to continue. I absolutely think getting the collective voice from any expertise that we have in the community, it's definitely an all hands on deck effort in order to support the students. And I think, you having the perspective of a parent and also a clinician is very helpful. And unique as well. So I think anything that we can do to support this effort is going to be critical at this time.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I know this is, having done some work in schools, I know it's not always easy, but, I am hopeful that we can do the best to support the kids and the families, and hope to make this as smooth a transition as possible. So if there's something that I can offer support with there too, I'm happy to do it. But, also just to kind of hear more as things come, as you kind of learn more or see more, and need to make some decisions as things come up. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Brad?
Yeah, I just want to thank Amy, and we've heard from a couple other parents or residents who've written in about this to draw our attention to these issues and sharing their expertise. I think we're going to have to be really attentive and responsive and proactive over the next 12 weeks, now that we can get eyes on kids, many of the kids 5 days a week. And we're going to have a coordinated plan moving forward, as I was suggesting earlier with the budget conversation, where this is, psychologists, sociologists will be studying the effects of what we've just been through, what we're going through for decades. We're going to have to respond to it and support our kids, because consistently next year. And so I hope that whether it's over the summer or whether it's a task force, whether it's just pulling some people together in the schools and out of the schools, but I think we're going to need a coordinated response of from the PTA and CPAC and the school specialists to really support our kids next year. So thank you, Amy.
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to make sure that, you know, any parent who has a child who's struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out to the principal, to the school counselor, to me. I think it's really important that, you know, sometimes kids are hiding their struggles, or sometimes parents, you know, feel uncomfortable sharing, but we're expecting kids to have change is hard. Even though this is a really good change, regardless, just change and transitions are hard for students. And so we don't know what we don't know. So it's very important for parents to share any concerns that they're having, or any concerns that if their kids are going home and when they're, you know, comfortable and in their safe place with their parents, sharing their anxieties, please communicate those to us so that we can be responsive.
Justin?
Yeah, thanks very much. Amy, thanks for calling in, and thanks for the communication. I think you're absolutely right. There's definitely going to be a little bit of a healing process that's going to take place among the students and members of the staff as we sort of close out this school year. Children are resilient. I think the majority of the population is going to kind of bounce back pretty quickly. But to Brad's point, I think we need to have a sort of an extra due diligence here on those that might not adjust all that well back in. And if it's a task force, or if it's taking a look at the budget and spending a little money to throw some resources at this, I just want to make a statement that I think it's important. It's as important as the curriculum, if not more. The kids can catch up on what, if there was any loss of learning, but it's vitally important that we make up any social, emotional, tragedy might be the wrong word, but it's ever so important. And I just want to let the rest of the panel know that I feel that way. And I think it's vitally important as we sort of finish this school year. So thanks again for everyone who has voiced those concerns. I echo that is reality.
All right. Thank you. All right, next.
Jen Gold, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hey, Jen Gold, 259 Harwood Ave. I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I'm a little emotional in a good way. Thank you guys. Everyone on this call, the school committee, the principals, Superintendent Clenchy, Lynn Snow, all of you for making this incredible decision. I mean, this extra week, I think, that gives the kids an extra full week in school before you guys were mandated to figure things out is huge. Every day that they can be in school is incredibly helpful for them. And I'm just, you know, there are resounding cheers going off virtually through social media. People are posting. The word is spreading. Everybody's so excited. And even, you know, the folks who are fully remote, excited that there's an intact plan for them, which there should be. So thank you guys for moving mountains to make this happen even a week earlier. I think most of our surrounding neighborhoods are not even matching that date. And so that's a huge accomplishment on Littleton's part. I feel really proud of you guys and of our town. And I just want to piggyback on what Amy said, just calling in now and the responses from some of you. I recognize that many of these children and some families are going to need some extra help and emotional support getting back to normal. And I agree, I fully support the use of funds and resources to help those kids and families that need extra help socially, emotionally, and academically. So just great news tonight, putting a huge smile on everybody's face. So thank you, that's it.
All right, thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Amy Tarlow Lewis, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Yes, hi, Amy Tarlow Lewis, and I'm at 3 Omega Way in Littleton. And I just wanted to tag on to what the other Amy had said about mental health, and I just kind of wanted to add a different perspective. So I know people just sort of talk about the transition for kids coming back to school, But I also just really want to remind people that the mental health crisis in this country has skyrocketed for children. There are 4 times as many kids showing up in the ER than there were before, and there are not enough psychiatric beds for these kids. They are waiting up between 3 and 4 weeks to get a psychiatric bed for suicide, and it's like a pretty serious issue. And I just also want to remind you that you could have a family unit and you could have a child in that unit who's sitting in the hospital for weeks waiting for a psychiatric bed, and they have a sibling who's still going to school. So it's just not about kids transitioning back to a classroom. There are some families who are really struggling with other members of their family. There are kids who are locked in homes with abusers and alcoholics. I just really want to make sure that you guys are really aware that there's just more than going on with just kids, their schedules changing. There's just really a lot happening. So everyone just seems very hopeful about being able to help these kids, but there are some pretty serious issues, and you really need to be able to deal with them. So that's sort of my comment on the other Amy. But the real reason why I had come today was to ask for your help with something. So many of you may know I'm the founder at Littleton Community Farm, and I'm on the board of directors. I'm the director of development, and I do a lot of programming for the organization. And this year, we have changed our food donation program, and so I'm sort of looking for ways for the school to help me to connect with families who are food insecure. As many of you know, Littleton Community Farm is a 501c3, and we're dedicated to hunger relief. And we have created what we're referring to as discounted CSA shares. And we have 2 sort of categories. We have very deeply discounted CSA shares for people who are pretty chronically food insecure. So our CSA, our commercial market rate CSA, is $600, but we have created a model that's very similar to the state SNAP CSA model. So people who qualify can purchase a CSA for as little as $60 for a 20-week season. And then we have created another category of CSA shares, which we're referring to as the COVID relief shares. So they are discounted shares. They're not quite as deeply discounted. They can be purchased for as little as $360 or $480. And these are for people who are sort of temporarily food insecure, people who have maybe had some disruption to income at this time or have faced some illness, but expect to sort of be back on their feet at some point in time. And so I have reached out to the Council on Aging and Health and Human Services to help market these CSAs. And I wanted to find a way to partner with the school to somehow reach these families as well. We have already reached out to our past food recipients and our database of CSA customers that have purchased CSAs with us. But to date, very surprisingly, nobody has purchased a discounted CSA. And so we are just looking to kind of find ways of accessing the people who really need the CSAs. We're a little resistant to sort of putting this out there for anyone to purchase. We really want to make sure these CSAs are marketed to the people who need them the most. I don't know if there's a way that you guys can sort of help me connect to these families who are receiving free and reduced meals.
I'd like to believe we can, but I would ask, actually, I think this would be more appropriate for you to deal directly with the administration. So if I would ask you to email Dr. Clenchy directly, and he will work with you to figure out who the right person or persons in his administration are to see what we can do to facilitate people taking advantage of this terrific program that you guys are working hard to offer. And I would also like to thank you, Amy, for keeping our feet to the fire and helping us remember all the challenges that a variety of all our families might be facing. We don't forget about it, but it definitely helps to be reminded. It's meaningful. And I know
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
welcome.
easy always to be the one making us face up to it, but I appreciate your efforts in that regard.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Dr. Clenchey, I'm sure you can help Amy out. And
Oh, of course. This is quite exciting. So, Amy, when you get a minute, please send me an email, and I will direct you to some staff that can certainly help out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, our funding comes from our donors, it comes from our CSA members, and it comes from some foundations that have provided us money to subsidize these CSA shares, including Emerson Hospital. We want to make good on our foundation and our donors who are really supporting this work, help us, help people in Littleton and the surrounding towns. So, yeah.
all right, great. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Katrina, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, Katrina Wilcox Hartberg, 156 Hartwell Ave. I want to say it's really, sounds really good that you guys are talking about this mental health and the transition back, because I know that it's been hard in all ends of the spectrum. It's after talking to people in town, this is such a big deal. And I really am grateful that you guys are putting time into this. So thank you. And then I wanted to circle back to the pooled testing thing, because what probably doesn't come across every week when I sit here and I just tell you numbers is that I really think so much of public health and making an impact in public health is about having discussions. So to me, the most impactful thing you guys could do for this pooled testing and to move that numbers is to figure out who is not opting in and having the discussions about with those families about what is the reason why they haven't opted in. And if there are groups within extracurriculars or whatever who have lower participation rates, there's a chance there to have be great if it's a team-led discussion, that ethos that you guys were talking about of like bringing people along and banding together. Because right now we are a team, we're mixing our cohorts, we're bringing back kids, families are involved because of household transmission. So at this point, having those discussions is really, really important. So if there's anything I can do to help on that end, I am all ears. Please reach out and let me know. This caring approach, this way of like understanding what someone else is thinking is really how we're going to get through this and get through it together and keep our community safe. So I really appreciate your efforts in both of these areas because that's what's going to make our change and make it better for the fall. So I just wanted to say thank you for these things.
Thank you, Katrina.
Matthew Ridge, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Matthew Ridge, 325 Great Road, Littleton. Okay. Here's my issue, and I'm going to try keeping this as short as I can because my son is having issues right now, just in general. He's a very active child. He is very social. He is also becoming very difficult to deal with. I'm not talking at home, I'm talking at school. And I know this because we've had conversations with some of our teachers. The problem is that you guys are saying we're going to get back to normal. I'm sorry, it's not fast enough. And I know you guys are saying we have to be safe, we have to be this, we have to be that. You know what? Our children will never get our childhood back. We will never get that year back. We will never get. My son is in kindergarten. He doesn't know what it means to play out in the field. He doesn't know what it means to interact with the children. He used to, when he went to preschool, we didn't have this, and I understand that, but he continuously says he misses chicken school, which is his way of saying preschool, and where he was able to interact with children, to have fun with children, to touch children, to play with children. And this is all things that children need growing up. It's not just the educational aspect of it. This is also part of the mental aspect. You can't just expect children to stay apart from each other. You can't expect them to just be in little cohorts. This is not childhood. This is frustrating, not only to children, but to the parents, because when he gets home, he doesn't want to say what happens at school because nothing fun happens at school. He doesn't have, the teacher has fun. The teacher has a lot of effort. They try making it fun. But the thing is, it's not the same. The children will never get that the children will never get that fun back. They will never have that time for the education back. We can give another week. My son's probably going to stay back 1 year just to redo this because of the fact that his education has suffered. You can't just say we're working slowly. There's a point in time where we have to let the reins go, and it's not just on the children. We need to get things back to true normal, not the new normal where we are going to be 4 feet apart, 6 feet apart. We have to wear masks. We need to get to a point where it actually is normal for our children. And before you say we need to wear masks, Dr. Fauci himself has said masks are not required anymore. Now, you can say what you want about the statistics. The head honcho of that, it was under Bush and under Trump and under Biden, are both saying the same thing. And I'm sorry, we have to stop being afraid. This is something I am trying to put a face up for my son. I'm trying to say to him, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. But there's a point in time where we are being told in school something entirely different, where we're being told you have to do this because of the bad germs, or you have to do this because of this. It weighs on our children, and it is showing. I'm glad you guys are talking about that. We are going to have a transition, but you know what? Too little, too late. I'm sorry. There are too many kids out there right now that are too afraid, that don't know what normal is anymore because they have spent almost a full year being told, be afraid. This is not a time for our children to be afraid. They are too young to be afraid. And I have to remind him that it's okay. And it's getting tough. It really is. Because my wife has practically lost her job. I'm the bread maker in the household. And the thing is, it is mentally tough for everybody, not just the children. We cannot tell them at the same level that you and I are talking why we have to do this. At 5 years old, you cannot tell them the pathogens, the this, the that. You could tell some maybe, but most 5-year-olds, they're happy to play with their dinosaurs. They're happy to play with their cars. This is not something right now I have a friend who comes over once a week so he can play with people in person without having to worry about all this stuff. When they leave, they cry. How do I tell them that this is the new normal? This should not be the new normal.
Matthew, we appreciate your point of view on this. This is the challenges that you're citing are ones that many of our families are going through, including school committee members. I think all we would be arguing is the extent of particular circumstances or personal circumstances. We are not pretending that this is good. We are not pretending that everything is better on an absolute basis. We are striving mightily to continue to mitigate the damage, but we've been pretty clear that we understand that this is not good, not healthy, and that it's going to take a long time in a focused effort by all of our staff to make sure that our kids can bounce back from this. Some of the comments you made, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree. We pay very close attention to the guidance being put forth by the CDC, by the state, by other health organizations, and we are only doing what is clearly mandated and directed by those agencies. So, if Dr. Fauci said masks aren't necessary, I'd be careful that I would think it was in a particular context and not necessarily for students in school. But we can check on that. But I will say that we are paying very close attention to that. When we are given the green light to relax those things, to get our kids closer to back to what we all want, we do it. And I think it's evident that the decisions we made tonight to get back and do more than we've been able to do, we're doing it sooner than is being required by the state relative to deadlines. So I think our commitment to trying to be as aggressive as possible has been demonstrated. We're in a pandemic, Matthew. There's just no getting around that. This has been devastating on a plethora of levels to a lot of people. So there's just no getting around it. This is awful. It's terrible. We're just doing the best we can to get through this. And we'll continue to do the best we can. We don't have any answers here that are going to satisfy you tonight. That's just not going to happen.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is that this is not a want. This is a need. We need to get back to normal.
Nobody here disagrees with you in that regard.
All right.
The question is how to do it safely, how to balance that need with the health and safety of our students, staff, and families and citizens of Littleton. That's the struggle. Where's the balance?
All right. I'll let the floor be, but I mean, it just seems to me that we are erring on the side of caution. And
Matthew, when you say that, you're talking about everybody, not the Littleton School Committee. The issues you're raising go so far beyond the Littleton School Committee. I can't exaggerate it. You're not wrong. I'm just telling you that those issues go way, way beyond.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying we are erring on the side of caution, and right now our children are paying for it.
Yep, it's not easy trying to strike that balance.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Brett?
Yeah, Mike, we kind of stumbled into this conversation about mental health. Thanks to Amy and other people who corresponded with us. I wonder if we can put it on the agenda for an upcoming meeting and plan to have the conversation once the students are back in for a week or so. I think that'd be really helpful to hear from Lynn, to hear from people. This is if parents want to participate in this conversation, it wasn't on the agenda. It might be helpful to get it on the agenda moving forward.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. I mean, I would just remind everybody that we have a clinical team in place. We've added resources since this began. We've clearly indicated that if we think we need to add more resources, we're ready to do that. Dr. Clenchey did mention that sometimes to find the people to fill that need can be a challenge because we're not the only group looking for more resources in that regard. So I want to make sure everybody understands that our efforts regarding mental health and social and emotional health are ongoing before the pandemic. They're accelerating during the pandemic, and they will continue to be a focus after the pandemic because that's part of what we do day in and day out, year in and year out. But given obviously that we're facing, unprecedented challenges, it would be a good opportunity to evaluate where we are. I just want to be careful that when we offer that type of presentation to the public, people need to understand your particular circumstances and situations need to be your own and worked with directly with the administration. The school committee doesn't make decisions on prescribing interventions and things like that. So I just always like to think about that in the context. But from a broad perspective, what are we facing as a district and what can we do to address it in the broadest sense? Yes, we should do that. I think that's a great idea. And I think you're right. Maybe waiting a couple more weeks after we get through this, we'll be able to do an assessment and get some meaningful information and data from our administration and our clinical team to see how we're doing.
Because we're gonna run out of things to talk about now that we've made plans. So it'd be nice to have something else to talk about.
Exactly, right. Yeah, just remind everybody, we will meet next week, and then we'll decide what we want to do after that in terms of frequency of meeting. But I think we're not going to relax too much. I know that. So in some ways, I think we're just gonna. I think you're right, Brad. I think that we're undertaking a big thing here. This is a big shift, so it could very well result in things we're not thinking about or anticipating that are going to need to get dealt with. So we need to be ready. So, all right. Anything else? I think we are at the end of the agenda. We're not going to do subcommittees tonight because this was our public budget hearing. We try to keep it down. But Brad,
can I make one announcement? It's kind of related. We were just talking about CPAC. It's just there's the CPAC interim team is hosting a workshop on Tuesday, March 30th at 7:00. You do have to register in advance, and we'll communicate out to parents in a couple different ways about that moving forward. It's about basic rights, evaluation, and eligibility, and it's open to anybody who wants to learn more about this, whether you have a child on an IEP or 504 or others. So we'll talk about evaluations, team meetings, the difference between IEPs and 504. It's just a basic information orientation meeting that I think will be really helpful for folks. So so keep your eyes on your emails for that.
all
Thanks,
right,
Mike.
awesome. Thank you, Brad. Anybody else? Lynn?
Hey, can I just echo on that? It's put on by the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and they really put on a fantastic basic rights workshop. It's extremely informative. It's very well received. So I encourage anybody who is interested to register to attend.
All right, thank you for letting us know about that. All right, anything else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Brad?
Brad Austin votes yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt votes yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Timlin?
Timlin Rassius, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you, LCTV, Dave and Judy. Thank you, Dorothy and Bettina. Appreciate it. See you guys soon.